You see, something's going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. Today this is actually a very special show for me in the fact that I'm actually kind of covering something myself, but with a guest on my own show. So today we will be going into planetary magic. I do think planetary magic is it's a very highly used form of magic. And I also think that if you were to understand what is kind of like going on with planetary magic, not how to use it, but if you see the symbols and you understand what's behind it, you might start to be able to see it in the media, the news, and other things. So the point of this is not to teach planetary magic, but more of to show what it's about, how it makes sense to people that use it, and I'm hoping that maybe people will be able to see it in other places and spot it out and be like, that's the bullshit right there. That's magic. Yeah. So, So very excited to have, I got Louis on from Uncannymysticminds. I got him on with me today to cover planetary magic. Louis, would you like to introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, what you do, and, what's your show about? And plug where they can find your show as well.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, well, first of all, right on for having me on your show. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Thank you. Me too.
Because it's like east meets west of like who let the dogs out. You know what I mean? Like who let the lions out, and it's like east meets west, and here we are. And then I've been liking your shit for hella long.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All the different esoteric and occultic stuff, like all that kind of stuff. I like. It's like a big interest of mine. And then, so a lot of the work that like you and Lux and company have done, it's really good shit, man. Like it's some shit that'll hold up, for sure. And so,
thank you.
So thanks for that. And, yeah, man. So, Uncannymysticminds is my podcast. And just like in the name, I guess it's pertaining mainly to mysticism, but I'm all about energy and like spiritual practices and connections and, understanding, like especially like in this episode, like understanding the essences of the energy, and then once you get a feel of like the essences of the energy, that can help out your life a lot.
Yeah, well, I will say from my own experience, when I started getting into planetary magic myself, and I will add that this is just what other people have said to me. I'm not sure what to say. I mean, I guess I would say it probably is a little bit more of a serious magic because it's just a lot more entailed. But I have had a lot of people say to me that they think planetary magic is kind of more of a advanced form of magic as well, because a lot of stuff can get integrated in it. But when I was using it myself, I could say is that I didn't use it so much to change the world around me as much as most people think that magicians would do. It's the fact of the influences that these things may have on you or the archetype of whatever that thing is in you as well. So I would use that to basically try to change myself, almost mental alchemy, really, in a sense.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, like you just said, how these things could also have influences, their energies and stuff over us to an extent. So I think it was good that you actually said that, because I agree with that totally.
Yeah, that's 100 because with the mental alchemy that we do, that's like the thoughts, right? And then so the thoughts is going to end up permeating like the aura and then the energy. So you're actually navigating your energy like through the matrix, like after you've concluded or like come full circle with things, or just even as you go and as you learn, because it's like a process to like be able to start to feel like things, even like the chakras or the archetypes of the classic planets. It's just like it just takes time to feel it out. It's like its own feeling or something, and its own essences, So yeah.
Totally agree with that. Before we get into it, I did mention that, this planetary magic, in my opinion, is used a lot from my experience. Even in the past when I had practiced magic, I use a lot of planetary magic. And the thing is with the lesser ritual of the hexagram or the greater ritual of the hexagram, one is to banish and then the other one's to invoke. You can also, in my opinion, you can also use that same ritual for the planets on the tree of life. I would sometimes use that ritual, not so much for, let's say, Mars, because you mentioned Mars to me earlier. I might actually be contacting Gabora, which is where Mars falls, but I'm still using that same ritual, the ritual of the hexagram. So I have, and it mainly, I'll be honest, for most of my magical career, I kind of got into that rather fast. And again, that's why some people told me, oh, it's kind of advanced. Maybe you should wait. I don't know. But I got heavily interested into that because it seemed a lot more deeper and a lot more of like in the head. So I was attracted to that stuff,
Yeah, like I guess when you say that, I think about maybe the reason why people might correlate it to that is because it's like more general, like hella shit goes into it. It's like it's very unlimited. So in terms of like the classical ones, it's like 7 primary ones, and then so each one has its. Even though it's 7, there's hella shit packed into each one of the 7.
Oh, hell yeah.
And then,
so much.
So it's like, imagine like God has two hands like me. And then all of them are like the fingers. And then today we're going to talk about like 7 of the fingers, and we'll leave the 3 out. Cause I know sometimes there's the tenfold, and that's even where other planets like Uranus and Pluto come into thing. But for today, for our first meet, we'll go, because we're classic gentlemen, we're gonna go with the classic shit.
Yeah.
So we'll go with the we'll go with the 7 classic planets, and then I'll even kind of how I'm gonna explain them today. Like on my on an old show, I had talked about the planets, and I went through it like the days of the week. Like I started with the first one of Sunday, and I ended on Saturday, right? And today, instead of that, I'm gonna go up the chakras. See, so I'm gonna go from the bottom, and I'm gonna end it to the top, and then so we can go over that and get like a feel for that and correlate all that stuff, and then that way it feels easier later on. Like if you want to digest the information, it feels easy. Like you can make sense of it. You can keep tying it together, Yeah.
And the good thing, I was when you mentioned something about the chakras, I was like, oh, that's great, because like I mentioned in the Kabbalah series that we just started dropping on the Occult Rejects, the chakras can align with the planets and the spheres on the tree. It was just that there was something else that I did not want to get into in that series because it would have taken up too much time. And now I have you on here getting into that. Works perfect for me.
Yeah, so, it's a nice sync. Yeah,
right.
By the way, that Kabbalah, because I saw that one a couple of days ago, that Kabbalah one's pretty fire, dude, with you and Lutz.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
There's a lot of information packed in there.
You're trying.
Thank you. And you go detailed, and then you cover a lot of different points, and then so that's like pretty good stuff, dude.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Real quick, just for the listeners, and this is not, I'm stressing this is not to teach people magic. The reason I am going to go over this ritual is really more is that I'm hoping people catch words or something in here that's like, oh, that reminded me of this that I've seen on TV. Oh, that reminded me of this that I've seen somewhere else. It's just to really put out stuff, hoping that people make connections with other things. It's not to learn this.
Yeah.
So I was just going, because I did want to go over, this is, in my opinion, the ritual that will be used when you want to start, from my experience, the ritual you would use when you want to start contacting planetary energies, or at least banishing them, if not invoking them. So real quick, I will just go over it's called the lesser ritual of the hexagram. The lesser ritual of the hexagram, mainly how I used it and how I think it's supposed to be used, you are banishing, the lesser one, you are banishing all planetary influences on you. Then if you wanted to invoke or bring in a specific planetary energy, you would use the greater one. And I'll explain the difference and everything with those. So for right now, this is just the lesser ritual of the hexagram. All right, so you're supposed to stand upright, feet together, left arm at the side, and then the right across the body. So You basically, if you had a wand, or if you don't have a wand, or if you're just using your fingers, you're going to keep your hand right here on your chest in the medium line. And I'm going to face the east. And I'm going to say I-N-R-I. Yod, Nun, Resh, Yod. That would be I-N-R-I again, but now in Hebrew. Following that, you say Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother. Then after that, you go Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer. Soul, Osiris, Slain and Risen. And Isis, Apophis, Osiris. And then you go, I sound fucking retarded doing this. You go something to that extent.
I like it.
Yeah, you extend your arms like this, and you say the sign of Osiris slain. Then you go like this, and unfortunately making the sign of a swastika. You say you say the sign of the morning of Isis. Then you raise your arms up like this, the sign of Apophis and Typhon. In my opinion, that is the beast, and that is also the sign that Crowley gave Churchill, right here. It's funny how there's a swastika in the ritual already, too. And then you cross the arms, and you say the sign of Osiris risen. And then you extend the arms again, LVX, the light of the cross. Some people do that all differently. Whatever. People have their own things. After that point, you go to the east. The east, every different direction will have a variation of a triangle. It could be two like this. Basically, what you do is that you're going to draw different variations of a triangle, and you're going to, say whatever you're supposed to say. I think basically you say Ararita, and that stands for Aleph, Resh, Yod, To, Aleph. It's kind of like a acronym. So you will go around the four directions, you will draw your little triangles, and then you will banish these things. Then after that, you'll repeat that whole thing all over again, and the ritual is done and over with if you were banishing. If you were then also planning on invoking, from my experience, you would banish all that stuff, and then you, instead of closing with that whole thing I read off, because you open and close the ritual with the same thing I just said, instead of doing that, then you would go straight into the invocation. And then at that point, every single planet will have its own thing of, every single planet has its own spot inside the hexagram. You will trace the hexagram depending on which planet you're invoking. So, like, how do I explain this? You may not be starting from the bottom left. You might be starting from the top. You're also going to draw the triangles in a different direction when you're banishing than you are when you're invoking. So basically you will draw the hexagram out starting from whichever corner that associates with the planet. And then if you want to get real gangster, you're going to try to figure out where the planet is in the sky of that day. You're going to do all four corners, and then you're going to go up to the sky, draw that, do the invoking, and then you do your ritual. You call in whatever you're calling in for whatever reason. I just wanted to cover that, again, in case anybody might have heard some stuff in there that makes sense to them. Any type of symbolism with the things that I've said. That was the reason why I wanted to cover that. It was not to teach people, but again, yes, and just like Arnold said, which is something I was going to bring up. I don't know if you're a Twin Peaks fan, Louis, but even at times Laura would say on Twin Peaks, sometimes my arms bend back. And if you were to look at the symbol of Venus and then the symbol of Mars and think of it as almost like a stick figure, I could see the difference with the arms bending back at some point. So thank you for mentioning that, Arnold. But I might bring that up later. I was thinking about bringing it up later if we happen to show like any of the symbols for the planets. But so yeah, that was my spiel. I just wanted people to see what the ritual was really about. As you can see, it's very bland in the sense of like, that's what you do to start opening up to work with the planets. The rest is all up to the person.
Yeah.
Like you would probably think like, shit, like shouldn't that ritual have so much more? Yeah, it should, because it's up to the magician now what they're going to call in, what they're contacting. There could be, things of God, like ideas of God, angels, archangels, demons, the planet itself. There's so many things that can do attached to that. That's where the magician actually does. That's where all the real work, in my opinion, starts to happen. That's where the intention kicks in.
That's their create.
Yes, that's
like their creative part that they had on their agenda or whatnot. And I like that you showed that because it shows about like the formalities that come with that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of formalities, and then it's like crossing your T's and dotting your I's when you enter something, and close something,
And real
right
quick,
on, dude.
Real quick before we let you start this off, Brave New Order Films. I said you just started doing the LBRP, and the hexagram sounds fairly complex. Just wait until you get to the Star Ruby. That's going to be in a completely different language. It's going to get a little bit more complex, probably. So if that's where you're going, if that's where you're heading, just giving you a heads up now.
I need a translator.
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is that in my opinion, the Star Ruby would also be used, I think, to contact planetary entities as well. So, that's why I even mentioned that. So, so we got that out of the way. I'm not going to recite the Star Ruby, maybe in another one. But if you want, Louis, if you want to, I guess, kick this off, and we'll get into whichever planet. I think you said you wanted to start with Mars. We'll kick that off.
Yeah.
You can cover what you got. And then just like the Occult Rejects, I'll hit you with what I got, and then we'll move on.
Sounds like a plan, bro.
Fuck yeah. So I'll let you kick it off since you're the special guest.
I appreciate it, dude.
Of course.
All right. Well, before I get into the actual like Mars and stuff first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about, I guess, getting just a little bit about the general stuff regarding the planets. So we can attribute these planetary energies to these primordial forces that have the sevenfold symbolism and that represent the higher powers of the universe. And these celestial bodies are also known as the wandering stars and also the luminaries of the sun and the moon. And they've been getting tracked and observed for thousands of years. And we've tied them over time. We've tied them to deities and heavenly beings as well.
Yes.
So if we can work with these energies, we can align ourselves to the order of the cycles that influence us every day. It's like a celestial template.
Yeah.
And
I would, real quick, and not to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, go, bro.
This is where I think, this comes in with the problem with teaching people shit. Like I was saying before, I'm not here to teach people stuff, but what you're saying is true. And the thing is honestly, I think like what he's getting into, the influencing stuff, this stuff can be used against us, or you can start figuring it out and actually change yourself. I'm just not the one who wants to start teaching people how to do that. I'm not putting my name on that. But what you're saying is that if you did understand these things, I do think you would be able to become a better person as well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And like for me, it's given me a lot of closure in a sense of like, I know we've all like, different people have had their conversations, or at least people like us who are into this kind of stuff. We've had conversations about like archons and stuff like that. And so a lot of like negativity obviously is a byproduct of this archontic force or archons, or how I see I can see archontic parasites. I can even see that sometimes. But what this is kind of giving me closure on is like when you think of archons, arc is in the beginning. These planets are also tied or correlated to archangels, You know, like Michael with the sun, Gabriel with the moon, Raphael, Mercury, and
A lot of
when you
arcs, a lot of arcs mentioned in the.
exactly, so when you learn about this, and then like you get into these things, it's like you see that there's a inverse for every one. There's like two sides of a coin type of a deal, right?
Yeah, that's another thing. I was going to mention it, but you just did. Yeah, like every one of these planets, too, just from my experience of how I've worked with them and looked at them, they all do have a negative and a positive attribute to them as well. Like,
Yes,
it's not
yes,
just cut and
that's
dry
exactly.
either.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. There's like the sun side, the light side, but then there's also the shadow side or the dark side of it, whatever you want to call that. And then so what I guess what I believe is that like knowing the essence of the archetype, it gives you closure on this whole archon shit. And then you can kind of get like an empowerment about knowing what time it is and what's going on with all this, and then how you can kind of get away from like the victim mindset. And so I mean, it's the universe speaks in jokes and it speaks in all this stuff, right? Where it's like archangel, the other side would be like an archon, right? And then that's how I see it. And then so
You toss arc welder in there, and you can really get some crazy ideas going on.
right, yeah, there you go. Like Mars is like a type of welder, you know what I mean? Like he's a forger for that shit, you know. But anyway, so and so that's something that's given me a lot of closure through the years, because growing up roughly the last half of my life, I've been able to see like things like celestial orbs, but at the same time I can also sometimes see parasitic entities, right? So this shit was something that I've been dealing with and living with, and coming to grips with the planet, the divine planetary archetypes. It lets me be able to be here without feeling like a victim or something like that, you know. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool, because it's all about like empowerment in that way, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, when it starts coming down to planetary magic, and I even think when you start kind of trying to tie that in with the Kabbalah in the spheres, I think you can start to see, there's vices and virtues, good things and bad things. You can start seeing, in my opinion, you can start seeing the negative attributes and the positive ones. And from my experience and the way I look at it, it seems like the positive stuff tends to be more of like the mental alchemy, maybe, or how you're using that energy to change you inside. And then I kind of think that sometimes when you're using that magic to maybe use against others to obtain stuff, that can almost be like the negative or the vice side, because in my opinion, you're still not using magic right if you're trying to fucking control others.
Yeah, because if you think about that with what you just said, probably what happened right before that, you know, the latter half of the one you're talking about, what happened right before is that they were probably thirsty for something, or like a craving, you know. And so if you're like thirsty for something or a craving for something, I wouldn't really be doubling down on the intention per se, you know what I mean? I've seen it time and time again. And then so it's like, the way that I've kind of gotten to know these archetypes is that I didn't exactly like, now I kind of work with them in my way, but I never really went out for them. It was more like I would be spoken to by them, like in my day. And then it's like, holy shit. And then like on some days, like I'll tell stories about it later, but pretty much it happens in synchronicities. And then all the stuff that's going on in your head, the universe is just like matching you, like straight up, like holding your hand, like, oh shit, like we're holding hands. And then you end up, and what I do is I keep asking why, well, why this? And I keep going into why. And I end up by default, I end up kind of filtering through and seeing what archetype is speaking to me at that time. Gotcha. That's kind of how that works for me. Like one of the ways, you know, a common way.
Hey, real quick, I just want to ask you, when it comes to archetypes, have you ever, like, what's your thought? Like, I think a lot of archetypes sometimes can actually really be just kind of like a grand story for really shit going on in your head, or or maybe a type of mindset or an attitude that you're taking on, regardless if it's good or bad. Do you think sometimes archetypes could just be that and not an actual literal God?
Yeah. Yes. I think that because a lot of these things are tied to like myths, right? Like you'll have the myth of Hercules and the myth of Poseidon, you know, who's like a above version of Jupiter. There's like all these different versions of Jupiter, right? Thor. So all these myths are stories and ways, along with the actual physical archetypes that people could draw. This stuff is ways that it communicates with our subconscious, because that's a part of us that we can't just grab off the top. It's the one that requires like actual like work, you know, like a bunch of internal work or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so it's a way for that stuff to communicate with you. And then that's how we end up coming to shit here, because it's very abstract, you know. I guess that's why I'm into this kind of stuff, because I'm very even though I use both, but I'm very right brainy, like very abstract. I'm a very abstract.
No, I'm the
thinker.
same way.
Yeah, you are definitely the same way, because you're all about people who love symbolism and like decoding symbolism. I do that shit all the like. That's a super abstract, right brainy, intuitive side, you know. I mean, we all use both, but people have things that they gravitate to in terms of like passion or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so
no, I agree with that. That's probably why I'm into David Lynch so much. I would consider him an abstract artist. So
see, there you go. Yeah.
So
yeah, and then it's that's probably why we get we get along, and we like each other's shit, because of that. We're very abstract, you know?
Yeah, and I that's why I had even mentioned that too. I wanted to ask you that question because it is, in my opinion, and you know, I was glad that you were able to, you know, say the same thing. I do think this is also part of the psyop when it comes to magic and secret societies. This is when Crowley saying slave to the gods, I think, comes in, is when you start thinking these things are real and they're not an archetype of the mind.
Yeah.
You almost start idolizing something that isn't even real and expecting it to fix your life.
Yes, and here we go.
Which is where we are today with the government.
With and also religion, you know what I mean? And then so whoop-de-whoop. I mean, we're living in it. We get enough examples a day. You know, I think everyone knows what the hell we're talking about. You know, we get enough examples in and out of our damn day. You know, it's funny, especially where I'm at, like physically. It's so funny, the shit that I observe. You know what I mean? So you know, and so you just got to kind of stick to yourself, stick to your guns, and your own energy is the best for yourself. You know what I mean? And then you can feel your own voice, you can feel your own heart, and then from there on, then you can be able to handle whatever funniness is out there. You know? Yes. But,
yes. Yeah. And I would even like to add, it was something that you were saying before, and this is how I think about it. You were talking about like the influences. Sometimes I think of like all those planets or all those spheres on the tree. They're almost kind of like their own radio station in a sense, where it's got this various maybe set of, you know, like 50 stations that one sphere sends out. And then this one planet has its own, this one planet has its own. And somehow, some way our brain just decides to pick up that station. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's almost how it has its influence in itself too, kind of.
Yeah, that's why I love the whole notion of like the classic, because it's like you got to start somewhere, and then so it's like how you describe that. That's like a broad wave. You know what I mean? Because then in Mars, then you can get into there's a shit ton of different like deities and like spirits associated with all that stuff. But I just kind of like staying general, or at least to start with, because then if you can't get your grip on the general or like a foundational part, then later on when you try to get into like detailed shit, you might get lost real quick, you know?
Oh yeah. I know. That's why we tried to, even with the Kabbalah series, I was like, you know, we had to kind of dumb this down to an extent or people won't even get it at all. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And I even think sometimes a lot of that shit is actually like kind of almost done on purpose. Me and Lex were saying that. I think sometimes this shit gets so mystified and woo-wooed that ends up screwing up kind of the whole actual knowledge or, you know, occultism behind it.
Yes, it ends up polarizing us.
Yes, very well.
It's weird. polarization is good. That's like even why I'm wearing like the shit that I'm wearing, like 3D polarization is like blue and red, you know. But it's all about discernment, and then with the part that you talked about, discernment gets lost, and then once that part gets lost, it's like, okay, well then you're kind of fucked a little bit, you know. And so
it's funny that you mentioned the green. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the blue and the red for the 3D, because those colored spheres on the Tree of Life, all the first ones you have the first ones after you cross the abyss. So it's kind of funny how it's like, because me and Lux do say we do think that the Tree of Life in itself is kind of like a matrix machine. You know, we're living in a matrix, and it's just funny how the two spheres, as soon as you come into flesh, are blue and green. Is that the background to the 3D reality we think we're living in? Oh, it's a little out there, a little off topic, but I'm sorry, blue and red. Yeah, blue and red.
Okay, yeah. And then, I mean, dude, what? Look at the government, the blue and red sides of the bird, the Bloods and the Crips, right? And then it's how I see it is like
and they are both on separate sides of the tree too, totally polarized.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay,
yeah, they're totally polarized. The one's on one's on one pillow, one's on the other pillow.
Dude, see, it's freaking yeah, and then so that's why I wear the shit that I wear. Like it's, to me, I see a little bit more like fire and then like water. You know what I mean? Kind of like that. A little bit more masculine and more feminine. You know what I mean?
Oh,
you're definitely like a fire. You're definitely like a fire dude.
That's why.
Right? Are you?
Yeah.
You must be like
well, I'm in Aries anyway. I'm in Aries anyway.
See, like you're like a fire dude, and then how I was saying earlier, like everything's in jokes and in riddles and shit too, right? Like it really is. And like with me, Lou, like I have blue. Lou is in blue, right? So I'm like blue inherently, like where I'm inherently more like passive, like more feminine, like that. Like that's my inherent stuff. Like on my face, you know what I mean? Like
no, I know what you mean.
In terms of my mask, it's like the first part that they'll see, that they'll feel before they get to my other parts, you know. And so, and then I like polarization because, well, one, it's just the way that I am, and then you can embrace everything here, and then not feel like guilty or something that you're hiding something or that you're lacking something. And then, I mean, it has its pros and its cons because being polarizing, kind of like you, like there's a lot of people that love you, and there's some people like, oh, this guy is like an asshole. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's either like you're with him or you're not with him.
Totally.
And so at least the good thing about us being the way we are is that it's easy to tell who's like with you off the bat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at least we can tell that. You know what I mean? Instead of like beating around the bush, like people can't help themselves. Like I noticed that they can't help it because since we're polarized, they'll let us know within a minute if they like us or not. You know.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, and then we'll get into the planets because with this may end up being a part two to this. Who knows?
I'm busy having fun this morning. I'm good, bro. Yeah, I've been looking forward to rapping with you anyway. So.
But what I was gonna say, it's funny that you mentioned you know, people can tell or whatever. I actually recorded earlier this morning on Spiritual Gangsters, the other show that I had with Teresa.
Yeah, I love that show. Teresa's
thank you.
Mom, yeah.
And I even had mentioned at one point the reason that I even, besides the, you know, being afraid of the OTO, I just stopped. You know, I can't go on and say about telling people to fuck fear, and I'm keeping my fucking camera off because I'm afraid of the OTO. So first off, I realized I'm just going to turn my camera on and they can go suck a dick. I'm not worried about the OTO. And two, I feel like that when the camera's on, you see my facial expressions. You see how I talk. You see my mannerisms. You know I'm not like fucking smoking crack or sniffing fucking coke off the fucking table. You can see I am real, and you get an idea. You know what I'm saying? It's just more, I feel like you can't really bullshit too much when the camera's on, because, at least for me, because I'm very like, you'll know what I'm thinking just from the look of my face.
Officially, your heart's on your sleeve. Well, once we're on camera, well, like it or not, our heart is on our sleeve. So fucking buckle up, Buttercup. You know what I mean? So, and then with you, I mean, it's good for you, because like you got like character. You know what I mean? So then it's good, so people can see your character, and then
that's exactly what it is.
They can take stuff besides the words, like just a small, like I'm a big believer of like body language and all that. Like I'm very good at, I've like studied this shit. Like I'm very good at body language, and I'm all about like body expression. And then so I'm all about that shit. And so it's good. It's like it's just adding more stuff to your tool belt or
Yeah.
more arsenal to your thing. You know,
I agree
whatever.
100%. I think what you said, the body
Yeah,
language
dude.
is an important thing. And that's why I was like, you know what? I'll put my camera on because I'm not scared. And I want to show people like, you know, I just for me, I think when you can sit there and watch somebody and see their body language and their facial expressions, you know when they're being authentic and they're not. So
Yeah.
just real quick, just to touch on
Yeah,
that.
that way they can respect your gangster. Because
Yeah.
if you're putting it out there, and then if your heart is on your sleeve, then it's like you got to get something back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
like some kind of from the universe. It doesn't have to even be by a person. You know, the universe will give you some kind of kickback.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. The universe will give you some
man.
sort of kickback. All right, so now we'll get into Mars if you don't mind.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mind bullshitting with you for an hour and a half. It's just that I do want to eventually get on the topic.
No, I'm itching too. No shit. So here we go. So I mean, so I was saying it's like up there. It's like a celestial template that we can use along to go with our own unique patterns. Like that's what I found out when I was I just recently got this app called The Pattern, right? And it's like astrological. You put your freaking birthday and all that shit. And I've tried different apps before. This app kicks ass. I actually just posted one on my story, and I thought about you because it's talking about like today's a good day for like partnerships, and then like building on shit and having the people that like will have your back long term. Says don't let fear get in the way of this shit. In terms like that was like the message, and I put it on my story. It's fucking creepy accurate how it gets. It's almost like the first week or two that I had it, this shit would come up in the morning. My little alert would pop up in the morning as I'm like thinking shit, and it's going along with what the fuck I'm thinking. And I'm like, this is freaky, dude. I'm like, oh man, like it just made me kind of think of like what's going on with this.
That's worse than
this AI.
That's worse than the advertisements that pop up on your phone because you were talking about it. Like you didn't even have to mention it. This shit already knew what you were thinking. That's creepy.
Yeah, I'm like thinking about pineapple juice because I haven't had it in a month, and then all of a sudden I get a thing of pineapples on my fucking commercial, right? But anyway, so it's like a celestial template that we can use to go along with our unique patterns and cosmic happenings. All right. So with these two things of our patterns and the cosmic happenings, you have the Hermetic axiom of as above, so below.
Yes.
So that's where a lot of like, so I love Hermetic principles, and that's where a lot of this one, gets tied into. So if you can figure out and feel what's going on up there, you can correlate it and make nice strategic or thoughtful moves for yourself based off what's happening there to yourself. And then that's like internal alchemy stuff. You know what I mean? And then you can see like how you were maybe like a predisposition you might have had, or you can just kind of like adjust yourself. You know what I mean? And then just kind of like how even like astrological talk, they'll be like, well, this planet is conjunct with this one, or this one is square with this one. Yeah. Think about like when they say like, if I tell someone, hey, me and you, let's square up. That means that we're going head to head, like mono, and we're going to be super close, right? So you got to know what they're saying up there, because that's what's going to happen. Because what I've done ever since a kid is that I've used like number stuff and color stuff and like all these things to figure out who's who in my life. Like my boss at work, he's a Mars dude, straight up. Like there's no taking that away. You know what I mean? My dad is like a mix of like Saturn, because he's super shady, because it's like the dark, and then he's also a Venus. He's also a Lu. So to me, people who are Lus is like a Venus people. Like how you have like different types of plants, all different types of plants. That's the strain, you know what I mean? So anyone that has a Lu strain, I consider that like Venus people. Like they understand something about that, But anyway, and so
real quick, since you mentioned flowers or whatever, the plants. Yeah. For people who aren't listening, when it comes to planetary magic, there's also crystals and herbs that can be associated with them as well.
Yeah. There's definitely that. I was gonna kind of throw it in, but then I was like, nah, I just kind of wanted to kind of how you mentioned earlier on the Kabbalah thing. I want to just not get too extravagant.
Oh yeah,
right
because
now.
then it'll
I
just be
want
too
to give
confusing.
like the essence of the feeling. So then later on, when people finish watching this show, they'll be like, "Oh, like that's what this kind of feels like." Because if I bombard them with too much, like,
Oh yeah,
and this
yeah.
fruit, because like fruit, and you can get with, it's like they might, it's like I don't know,
Drugs. There's drugs that go along with them. I mean, if you have
Yeah. I
777,
don't
there's
I
drugs.
don't want to go
listed in there.
overloading, right?
Yeah, I
so
wasn't even going to go into that stuff either. I just figured I'd mention it. I didn't
Yeah,
even go into that on
I
my
was about
Kabbalah
to.
because I was like, this will be way too much now.
Yeah, you got to kind of pick your spots, and
Yeah.
then later on, that way we'll have another time to really do that shit right and give them the feeling of that. So that way, the feelings don't get overlooked with the information. You know, I just don't want I want the essences to stay in as much as possible, so it can like resonate with people or whatnot. You know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so we use what's happening on the big macro levels of life, and we tie it into understanding what's going on here. So we can adjust our inner worlds of emotions and contemplations. And so we can also see that these correlations tie to myths, you know, how we were saying earlier, all these different stories. And the beauty of it is that no matter which myth or myths you're looking at, it's like perfect with the essence of the planet. It's like it fits really good. Like no matter where in the world you're hearing the story from, it still fits really good with our personality type. You know.
That's what I think is really big that you just said. Sometimes what I think these characters or these mythical people or these, you know, gods or whatever, sometimes I think it's just the personality or the character arc in a sense, again with the arc, that it's really trying to show you instead of what people sometimes get stuck on just the visual aspect of the god. It's really more, I think, more of the personality and the story and where did it start off? How did the person end? You know, was there a change? There's a lot more, I think, like you're saying, like I was, you know, whatever. I just think there's a lot more to it than just the, you know, the god.
No, that's for sure. Because even when I'll talk about like mythological stuff, I'm saying it, but I'm just more so trying to get like the point across. I don't necessarily believe that it like happened per se. And I honestly kind of don't even really care that much. I know that this world is hella unlimited and this and that, but I don't think in order to do like internal alchemy or these kind of things, or to just even learn, I don't think it's necessarily super important to come to a decision about whether it was super factual or super not. You know what I mean? Like whether, say, Jesus really walked the earth, you know, because like they say he walked on water. Like, was that him walking on water, or was that the sun, how the sun shimmers and it walks on water? It's like at this point, I don't care because I'm getting the essence of it. And I'm just trying to improve myself. It's not gonna improve my life by learning to think about whether or not he did it 2,000 years ago. Like that's kind of out of my jurisdiction. I don't get paid enough for that. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. I even say at times myself, I mean, just using Jesus as an example, even if the guy didn't exist, his story is still telling you something.
Yes, and a lot too.
Yeah.
And then so at this point, because I've rattled my brain around going like trying to get the details of that other stuff down, and then I just, if it rattles your brain too much, it's just not. I'm not meant like at this point. I'm definitely okay with not knowing per se. I just want to take the essence of the knowledge and of the learning, and how can it benefit me and my family, my friends, my world. You know what I mean? Like, so. All right, so whether it's a magician using spears for influence or just for someone to utilize spiritual powers that come from it, these signature energies make themselves be known in one way or another. In more Western esoteric concepts or traditions of the classical planets, it's more focused on ancient astrology that's known as planetary magic. So right now, I want to quickly talk about like the difference of like deity and spirit. And so I think the deity is more the actual, like the bigger part. Like when I experience like these things like in my day, like it's like weird how it happens because it's like a day. And personally, like just because something happened on Thursday, it's not necessarily Jupiter, or like or just because something on Saturday, it's not necessarily Saturn. Like I think last
Well, there's
Last
also
week, Saturday,
planetary hours for every day as well. So
and
I
that
mean,
too, yeah.
I mean, even
And so,
though
but,
today is a Tuesday, I mean, I don't know what hour it is right now, but I mean, this could be the hour of Venus. It does, you know what I'm saying? Even though it's a
yeah,
day
so
of Mars.
yeah, I mean that stuff does it has its spot like the days, but I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily go like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I think of deity, that shit was just happening, and it feels like the whole world is talking to you, like the whole universe is talking to you. That's like it's like as big as it gets. And then when I think of like spirit, it's like more specific. Like if you want something more specific, and then they have like certain jobs that they specialize in. You know what I mean? Like that. It's almost like the deity doesn't have a super specialty. It's just like so vast or more broad. And then the spirit, it's more so like they're specific. And then when I feel or I felt the spirit, like a spirit, they feel smaller. They feel more like my size.
Mm.
You know, when like the deity feels ginormous, the deity feels like out of this planet type of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, that's kind of a difference between deity and spirit. And then so, all right. So I was talking about how spirit feels more personable, and it's more closer related to this dimension and the next dimension, like the fourth, the astral. And deities feel less personable, and they're like just a bigger projection. You know, like it feels like the whole projection screen, like where you can't decipher something. And so
I like that though. How you're saying the spirit is much more personable. I agree with that.
yeah, it feels more like
It's almost like the as above, so below in a sense. If you're thinking of a deity being out there, and then your spirit could be the below and the effect of that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could take that so many different ways. But
exactly how we all have our own spirits. So like those spirits that in that sense, they're more like ghostly. You know, like more ghostly characteristics. And so, okay, here I was talking about my flack of archontic entities. So a lot of flack comes from the concept of our archontic entities, and I believe the archetypes are a way of coming to understand about archons in a way that has us embrace the primordial forces of creations. And so, like chakras, each one needs its space to flourish. Just how there's a spacing, right? You know, like here's my heart, and then here's my throat. There's like a no man's land in between. Like they give themselves their own space in order, like because they have their own stuff. You know, like they don't cross into each other like that. All right, there's like a respect there. So
you don't cross the streams like they said in Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
don't cross the streams.
Exactly. Seriously though, and the opposing side of an archon can be like that of an archangel, right? And so it's just like two sides to a coin, man. And so wrapping your head around that is just after that you're not gonna like want to fight the world per se. Like you'll have like this understanding of like where there's peace in there because you don't feel like a victim, and then you can like take your power back. You know what I mean? Like it's all about taking your power back too.
Exactly.
So
taking
all right. So here is Mars. All right. This is the base. This is the bottom. I know I've heard of other people like this is how I live my life in terms of like this is what I believe to be true. This is what I felt because I've heard a little bit of differences, and when I try to fit them in, I just don't end up like concluding with that. So for the base, which is right here, right there, right below your stuff, right? Kind of like in no man's land, but it's
kind of like the bottom of like your tailbone almost, right?
Yeah, but it's below. Yeah. And it's kind of like when people like say when like a martial artist, you know how there's that horse, like they call it the horse stance, right? And they're hell of like this, and like they're like super grounded. That power is from the base. They're using like the base. So like if someone tries to push them, they're not gonna budge, right? So that's like what athletes do. Even like baseball players, volleyball, like anything, or even dancing, whatever, right? It's that's how you get your base, right? And so
you're very grounded.
There you go. Because without that, you're kind of screwy Louie. And so Mars falls under the day of Tuesday, and so I'm gonna break down in Spanish. That day is martes, right? So Mars, right? There's always like the base of the word is always in there, right? or at least in this situation it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mars is tied to the fire of creation and the will of the primordial forces. So how this shit is down here, the red, it's like the primordial, like that instinctual fight or flight. And then even that's why on the brain, like we have different aspects to our brain, but I believe how it's on the bottom, it's the bottom of the brainstem. It's like our brainstem part. And that's that how people say the reptilian thing, but it's like the fight or flight, survival, instinctual, like where we feel like our caveman shit. And this stuff you can't help. The primordial, it's like if you see something walking down the street and you really have an affinity to it, your primordial senses will not be able to help how you feel. Just like how animals will go and they'll smell each other and all that stuff. Like that stuff's just primordial stuff, right? And so these energies can't be helped. And so just like natural and primitive cycles. So it's okay. A lot of times we try to like shame this stuff and there's no reason to shame it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people now I kind of see are starting to get like with their primal aspect. There's this guy he's called the Liver King, and he's like really buff. Like he's super yocked up.
Oh, I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. The reason why I just barely found him last week.
And I think all he does is eat liver, right? Or some shit like that.
Yeah, he eats like hella. What I saw on the YouTube, he eats that, but hella other shit, and it's like raw. So think about that. That's like caveman shit, right? Like primal shit. And he said, "Oh, that's a nice cat." And once he said that his name was Brian before, and then once he had his change or whatnot, he turned into the Liver King because that was him saying that I'm like embracing my primal side. So as soon as he became the Liver King, he stopped taking showers. He grew his hair out. Now his beard is out to there. Like he's very primal, right? He's embracing that primal side. So it's okay to do that. And I think now people are starting to pick up on it because there's like a sense of like shame in a way, which is one of the lowest vibrations you can have, shame.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And there's a sense of shame with like, because people want to be like sophisticated, and it's okay to still have a primal side, you know? And so I want to write.
It's funny. Teresa, who co-hosts my other show, I think she was the one who actually told me about.
Oh shit. Bull testicles.
Yeah.
Oh
I think she was.
You want
I think she
somebody
was.
eat him on his guest. Or on the podcast. Yeah, he had all types of shit on the table. It was like,
I think I found out from her actually, which is pretty funny.
Oh yeah, it was wild. I just barely saw his first episode last week, you know, and so hopefully this will show up on the thing. See, so that's Mars. All right, that's a sign. It's like a little circle with the arrow, and so the arrow here is pretty significant in a sense because there. Go and move forward, right? It's like ready to attack, right? And then the other one I think about is like I think of like like a phallus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's very masculine and has the phallus. In terms of like female, Mars is the male classical out of all this, and then Venus is like the counterpart in terms of like the taking in, right? And so
well, because I was in Aries, and I, like you even said, I seem very like martial. I would try to balance myself with energies from Venus because I knew I was a little bit too much one direction. I needed to go a little bit more the other way to be a little bit more balanced. Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because you're very fiery.
Yeah, right? I had to add some love and compassion.
You had plenty of fire. You were trying to even yourself out.
Exactly. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah. See, as you know, that's what it's all about. And then so Mars is like the warrior and protector archetype, right? So it's not just all bad. Like it's like, yes, there's chaos and destruction and like a wrath temper type of the thing, but
well, yeah, like a perfect example, I would say Aries. I mean, unfortunately, it's the zodiac too. If you like look into his stuff, he was very much kind of like, I just like war and I like to kill, and this is an excuse to do it. And then you could take somebody as like one of the Knights of the Round Table. I would say that they would still fit on that idea. It's just one's doing it for different reasons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, maybe that person's more of a protector and the other person kind of gets a kick out of it. You know what I'm saying? So.
Exactly. Well, one is like a bully, You know, one is like a bully, and then the other one's like a protector, like having someone's back. You know what I mean? I can relate to this archetype for sure because I've been the one like where, like, if my little brothers, you know, if there was like a bully trying to bully them, oh, I would be there in a second, and I would, or even with my other friends, my other like really close friends, I would just step in the middle of their shit. Like if they were getting into shit, I would just step in the middle, like, all right, now this is just with me. So what's going on? That's just how I was. And so that was like my inherent protector side coming out, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Or a lot of it could be like with competition too. Like if there's like a dance event and there's people battling, and you could feel when people walk in that place that they're using so much Martian energy, because they're like, if anybody wants to come up to me, they're gonna get it. Like that's the feeling that these dancers portray that they have. You know what I mean?
No, I know what
and it's good. It's good, and so everyone's on their toes. You know what I mean? And what's good about it though is that it's like, I think it's probably like the most productive one, where because of that fire, you can be hella creative, and that's why it's the fire of creation. So like if you got hella shit to write or this and that, it's good to use Mars. It's just like a fire. You have to know how to temper the fire.
Oh, it could be used for courage and passion too. It doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when you're doing whatever work, if you're passionate about it, like that's where all that shit comes out, or you'll be brave enough to do the thing that you were kind of afraid of. And
yeah, I had a friend. I mean, I was friends with him back in the day when I was in the OTO, and you know, he would use Mars sometimes, and he was into sports, and it wasn't even like, you know, sports that were like you're fucking someone up. It wasn't like boxing or kickboxing or anything like that. But like he would sometimes use Mars just for the energy and the passion and the strength to compete in the sport that he was doing. Yeah. It had nothing to do with actually hurting anybody. You know?
Yeah,
so, I there's different angles. Too. There's just tons of different angles for these things.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I played. I played a little bit of football. Soccer was like kind of my main sport, but I played a little bit of football, and especially in football, man, holy crap, did I use that? It just, well, I didn't. It's not like I did it on purpose. It just happened, I guess. And then later on, I realized what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, how am I summoning? Like, what am I summoning? And so, but I was a kid, so I didn't know what I didn't have an explanation for it, you know? Gotcha. But yeah, it's very motivational. You know what I mean? Like light a fire under your ass and boom. And then you're like, you can have that spirit in you where like you're relentless and shit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, all right. So besides being the warrior and the protector, it's correlated with the root chakra, how we've been saying. And this emphasizes the fight or flight responses that are tied to survival. And with the fire of creation as its spirit, it lights up desire in order to take action and pursuits in our creative endeavors. And so it's funny that you mentioned you mentioned earlier, he was like, I forgot what you said, like a blacksmith or something, right? And so Mars has Hephaestus. Sorry if I butchered that. No, it's the Greek version deity that is the blacksmith of the gods who uses fire to forge metal. And he's also known as a purifier of souls. So think about what's happening with all that fire. It's like only fire could purify your soul. You know what I mean?
That's funny because I will mention, I do think where Mars falls on the tree of life in Gobur, and it's almost as if even the way of looking at how the chakras, you're going about with the chakras, I think that either Mars can either keep you grounded and not ever spiritually move up, or if you understand Mars to an extent, you can actually start using that energy to progress up the tree spiritually or progress up the chakras. It's that whole double-sided, you know, it's a double-edged sword. You know what I'm saying? Either you can use it to benefit yourself spiritually, or that energy can keep you grounded and almost animalistic in a sense. I mean, I hate to go to that extreme, but I do think
that's
both. And I even think in the tree of life, Tree of Life, I think Mars is when you actually get birthed into existence too. So which is interesting to me, because you said again, fire can cleanse the spirit. Going up the tree, I do think once you get past Gabor, you're starting to go into the spirit. Yeah. So when you were saying all that, I was like,
nice, man. It's cool, man, because I don't really like. I'm not into the. I'm just barely getting somewhat introduced to the Kabbalah, so it's nice hearing. It's just so nice. I like when shit ties hella good.
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean.
that was
I
great.
really like that. Yeah, and it's like in terms of the root chakra, a big thing of that is like survival. Like, do you feel like you're surviving or not? It's really like that, and then that's where the animalistic stuff comes from, you know. And then if you can't get that part grounded in, unfortunately, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to move up to the sacral chakra. It's just not going to happen, dude. You know. And then yeah, man. And then what people do is they kind of bypass all that, and then they live too much in the higher ones, especially like super, like what you call like super spiritual people, or maybe new agey, super new
Oh, they're
agey.
totally disconnected from reality, unfortunately.
They'll live it just in here.
Yeah.
And then it's like they forgot.
It's like you forget you're still stuck in whatever this is. You're still
The
here.
bottom. Yeah, they forgot the
to
bottom.
an extent. Yeah. No.
The physicality, or the, you know, like tied to that. And so yeah, that I've seen that happen. It's like a version of spiritual bypassing.
I agree.
Yeah. And so like the aggressive nature of Mars, it can make it easy to jump intensely into projects or even overtaking plans of domination. You know what I mean? Like where you want to establish domination, right? And it has initiatory aspects. All right. And it makes sense that it's the initiator. If like, what's going to start it off? It's the bottom. We have to start from the bottom to start it off. Like, you know, from the, like, first things first, you know, whenever you start a job or whatever job you got, first things first, right? If you can't do that, then you're never going to finish the job.
Well, I mean, even then, I mean, you go back to fight or flight. You got to make a decision to do something for anything to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta choose something, or nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, you got to come to grips with that.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. And so, yeah, without that, you can't make things like that happen. But it has an engulfing energy, and it's very bold and dynamic. Dynamic meaning it can go on to the next one hella quick. It can take off. And that's what gives it the creativity and the sparks for enthusiasm. You know what I mean? Because how you said passion, that's where a hell of that comes from. You know, so it's okay to embrace it. Mars gets like a bad rap as like, of course it's war. Of course it's like, well, yeah, that's where that comes from. Battles. You know how there's a battle here and this type of battle, and yeah, but that's not all it is. You know what I mean? People just get hung up on a certain thing, you know. So you want to embrace. Or
it may not be so much physically either. Like I do think. Have you ever read the Gita?
No.
All right. In the beginning of that, it's basically like this person is like, there's a battle about to go on, and there's people on both sides, and he starts talking about like, oh, there was my teacher, my parents, fucking neighbor, whatever. You know, just generalizing it. Yeah. In my opinion, that was not actually real. I think if you start to look at what he's saying, all the people that have influenced your thinking and your way of life is on the battlefield. You're in the middle, and you're going to start the chaos and change of your thinking, and you're going to decide, what do I need to keep and what do I need to discard that I've been brought up and indoctrinated into? It could just be mental warfare and changing in your thinking, which could still end up in a positive sense.
That's dope. Very dope. It gives me like chess vibes.
Yes.
Like yes. Life is like a game of chess, okay. You know? And then, I mean, well, one other thing that I say, it's also kind of like, I used to say life is like a marathon, because you want to be able to survive to the end. Right. And then once I got into like poker, playing at poker rooms, I'm like, no, life is like a poker tournament or a poker match for sure. Cause it's so complex. There's so much shit. And what's the number one archetype that you get when you walk in a poker room? It's Mars. All these motherfuckers are out for you. They're out for blood. As soon as you sit down in that chair, they're just eyeballing you, like, oh, this guy, like I'm gonna take him out just right now. Yeah. And they try to push you around like straight up bullies. You know what I mean? And then so you have to.
Yeah, you know.
And even I think Doyle Brunson, who's like one of the most famous poker players, super OG old guy. Like he's like, I think they might have called him the Godfather of poker. But anyway, he was saying that it's like, dude, when you go in there, it's a war. It's a game of war. And he's like, people are forgetting that this is a game of war. That's how he won so much money back in the day, in his heyday. You know what I mean? Him and his buddy were going around town to town, driving around with guns on them, and they were going to war. And that's what they did, you know. And yes.
You know, it's wild that you just mentioned that whole thing with poker. This is really weird, and this is just another random thing that pops into my head. Maybe Arnold, if you're still listening, or the people from Element, if you're in here, my Twin Peaks fans. This is really weird how I find it just a way to tie in stuff. If you watch Twin Peaks Season 3, Agent Dale Cooper eventually somehow comes into this existence basically from coming out of a light socket. He comes out of a light socket. Either electricity forms into Cooper. Basically is now the person that there was someone prior that was kind of like him, another version of him that happened to be in a house with a prostitute. Dale Cooper comes out of the light socket and the other guy's gone. So now the prostitute comes back in the room after she's done taking a shower. Come on, you're going to get ready. What are you doing? The guy's laying on the fucking floor. Looks like there's throw up on the floor or something. The guy puked, whatever. Basically isn't saying a word. So now you have this guy that came into existence through an electrical socket who is now with a prostitute who is wearing black and purple, which to me now goes back to Saturn. So in a sense, you are showing me the Scarlet Whore now. And now this guy gets into a Jeep. She takes him, a black woman, black skin, gets into a yellow Jeep. Here we go with the B symbolism. The black and the yellow, the B symbolism. This dude's still not saying a word. She drives, starts taking him somewhere. Doesn't open his mouth until they show that he crossed Sycamore Street. Sycamore is a male energy. Think of phallic. It grows up real high.
Oh, sycamore tree.
Yes, and women would be more of the flowers. Pretty to look at, but they're very low. They're male energy, much more expansive. The guy never says a word until they cross the streams, in my opinion. He's with the female. They're crossing Sycamore Street. Then he finally talks. And where does she drop him off at? Fucking Las Vegas. And you were just talking about poker. Yeah. And in my opinion, she brought him to Las Vegas because that is kind of like showing he has been fully birthed into. Again, it's showing the Mars energy and I think being birthed into existence. I know that was a real fucking weird tangent to go off on.
That's
but
what it is.
I see that in that now.
See, those are the correlations.
Yeah.
See, and then that's why how you were saying like in the early end of the show that like saying these things to like to be informative, and then maybe you can take some kind of like correlations and some like things will pop out in your head. And then later on, you'll be able to tie this stuff to your life. And then that's how you can get to know this shit. You know what I mean? Because at first people are like, what? It's like, it's so wonky or it's so general or something, but it doesn't, once you participate, it just, you can just kind of pick up on it and then it'll speak to you. Yep. You know what I mean? And you'll probably resonate with whatever is being expressed, you know.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to take you off the whole thing. I know that probably fucked you up, but I was just
bro.
This seems really weird.
I actually welcome that, man. I want you to do that. Yeah, I mean, I like it too. So, no, man. So, all right. So we talked about how there's animalistic stuff here, and I talked about the brain stem, how it's the very fight or flight part of the brain, and it's funny. It's not a coincidence that it's on the bottom part, just how the base, the red is on the bottom part here, right? So that brainstem or reptilian brainstem, you know, that's where those instincts come from. And that's where, when they say primal, like when I think of red and then Mars and the base chakra, I think of primal will. I think that the first three chakras are like the lower chakras, right? What people consider the lower chakras. I consider them more like fire and masculine, like the three of them. And there's different versions of the will in these three. And so the red will, which they call just regular willpower or primal will or primordial will, that's that one. It's like the animal instinct that you can't help. You cannot help this. You can't help what you like. You like what you like. You don't like what you don't like. It's very cut and dry. It's very obvious, like how an animal loves a certain food and doesn't eat a certain other food. It just is what it is.
No, I know what you're saying. The thing doesn't. It's just like I just don't like this. It doesn't matter what the can says. Like it doesn't fucking know. You know, like a dog is just gonna.
Primal thing. Like you just can't be helped. It just cannot be helped. Like that was just. It was just gonna happen, and that's just all there was to it, and that's okay. And that's our part of our primal side. And after that, in the second chakra, I consider that a divine will. And then I consider the last one of the fire, like instead of will, I use urge, like a soul urge. And then later on, I'll kind of break down how these things will.
Okay.
Because if you just hold on to your primal will, you're going to be too much of a damn animal out in these streets. You know what I mean? Like it won't be good for you. It won't be good. Like you might go to jail or you might hurt. So I don't know, but something it could catch up with you real quick. So you have to freaking incorporate the other versions of the will, which we'll get into a little bit more as we tie into the rest of the chakras, so I don't start bouncing too crazy.
No, you're good. And I think what's important that you're saying too.
I want to show you guys. I got a couple.
Real quick. I think we're screwing up here. It was losing the connection. You probably didn't hear what I said. Real quick, what I think is important, what you're saying, even if you look at the first sphere, well, the first chakra and then the second chakra, you can easily see how those things could be stuff that keep you stuck in this world. One could be very animalistic, like we were saying before, just very basic. I think a love for earthly things. And then the next one up is associated with sex. That is another thing that can keep you very much stuck in this sphere, I think. And looks like you might have froze on us. So I don't know what's going on here. Hopefully you come back. Looks like our boy Louie is stuck. So, all right, and we lost him. Now you're stuck looking at me until he comes back. But yeah. So what I was saying, basically, in my opinion, not so much. Well, we haven't gotten into the third one yet, but I will at least go on with the bottom two chakras, and especially with Mars and the next chakra going up. I do think that those things are showing you the vices that can keep you stuck in this world. And I also think they are the showing you the way of getting out of the bullshit as well. Louis, sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I just real quick just mentioned that the lower chakras that you were talking about, I do think that they can also show you what's keeping you stuck here. Like the first chakra can be very, like we were saying, animalistic. Can be very much of this world. And then even the second chakra going up is still associated with sex, in a sense. Yeah. That's another thing to keep you stuck in worldly delights. You know what I'm saying? So I see what you're getting at with even the bottom ones are almost like anchors to this world unless you know how to unhook yourself.
Yeah. Because I know I've heard that saying before. I forget. I've heard it a couple of various times, back before, but people that are just like, say for a man to be just fixated, if his day is revolving around who can I bang, or like, am I getting tail? If that's like his, like in the front super priority, like he can't think about nothing else except that, he's super bogged down. He's super tied in there. Yes. And there's no way he's going to be able to, not in the foreseeable future, there's no way he's going to be able to start sprouting to sprout out, what I mean? Like a tree, or like in terms of like Kundalini, like there's no way in hell. Like that's it's just going to be stuck. And it's okay to realize this. Oh yeah. Because these are the tools that we're using to figure this shit out. And then after that, you can maybe start to learn to discipline yourself a little bit. It's okay to like what you like, but it's
balance.
Like learning.
It's all about balance, I think.
Yeah. And then to learn about the discipline, how you can discipline yourself in the right way, and to not shun yourself. Because that's why I was making the point earlier about it's okay to embrace your primal in a sense, because that's where, if you don't, that's where straight up shame and guilt will be. And then that's another way to anchor yourself here in a not good way.
I mean, look,
there's like,
look, you could use the energy of Mars, which, you're going as the bottom chakra. You could use that as actually, in my opinion, power to discipline yourself, which will then help you move up the rest of them.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, it's just very,
yeah. And that's why it's the initiator. It has the initiator. Fire could spark you, could light you up like that in
passion.
that way to initiate you. Like that's why it's there for a reason. It's like it's super powerful.
And that's
You
why
know
they
what I
say I
mean?
got to light a match under their ass.
Yeah, light a fire under their ass. Yeah,
You need
and
that
it's
to get
very,
going.
yeah, they're very like what from the which I correlate to like masculine, I guess, is that they're very alpha-ish. Like each one is hella alpha. Like those first three is where like the alpha's at for sure. Like yeah, and they're strong in their own ways, or they're fighters in their own ways for sure. Like that's without a doubt. Yeah.
Awesome.
So all right, I want to show this card here, the Tower card.
Perfect. Yeah, we can see it.
So yeah, so you could see that there's fire coming from here, as we've been talking about fire, and chaos and destruction is associated with this. So your life through this archetype can come into shambles. It can wreck shop very quickly and flip it upside down, or just burn it down to the ground where your paradigm gets shattered, right? And I notice here that there's a crown on the top, and there's something to this. The crown is at the end, right? Like at the top. And I think these are the ends, like the bottom and the top. And if you can figure out how to deal with the tower moment and like rise from the ashes, you will get your crown. Like that's another good thing about this, after you dealt with like purging yourself or something like that. Sometimes you have to burn it down or get rid of stuff in order to make room for like where you're really supposed to be going. You know what I mean? And so,
I think it's a really good example. I mean, we were saying this again before. We mentioned it a few times. If you look at that card, I think you can take it a few different ways. You can either see that maybe Mars is the energy that you need to rise above, or Mars can be the energy that fucks you up and stops you from rising above.
Yeah. Yeah. Straight up.
Because the tower's being built, and then now you destroyed it because you went back to your lower Marshall stuff.
Yeah, and it'll bring it back down to the ground. It'll that huge tall tower will be on the ground, and this is about grounding, right? Because without that, people can't do any kind of work. Like if you're not grounded, good luck on trying to do any type of healing with yourself or something like that, right? Or whatever kind of work you're interested in. Like, good luck. It's just not going to happen. So that's why grounding and all that stuff and setting yourself up is almost just as important as like whatever the actual thing that you're going to do. Like when I go to the gym and work out, a lot of this is the hour or whatever, or my prepping before. There's like a lot that I'm doing. I'm like stretching and doing all of this shit that's like the behind the scenes shit. And if you can't ground in that, there's no way you're going to be able to perform when you have your little 45-minute window to perform.
Very well said. Very well said.
Yeah. And so,
I mean, I didn't even think like, before I mentioned that whole ritual and everything before. I mean, prior to that, I would have taken, just gay as it sounds, I would have taken a fucking ritual bath. I set up the ritual bath. I meditate. Yeah. The whole shit started when I started that, not when I got into the circle and started doing my stuff. It all started prior, mentally, of preparing myself. What am I about to do and what's about to happen and what am I looking to reach? Yeah. All that stuff started already in my mind before I started fucking drawing silly shit.
That's what time it is. That's why you've gone through the shit you've gone through in terms of your experiences, and because you've been around the block with that. And what I'm learning on the more recent side of my life is that like magical stuff or magic, a lot of it, or fucking, I don't know what percentage of it is, but it's fucking just mindset. The mindset of knowing how the universe works. And then you can put yourself in that mindset of knowing how this stuff works. And then there's a trust that comes in after that. And then that feels good. is when there's that established trust that you have in yourself and outside of yourself. Even though there's no outside, but quote unquote outside of yourself, there's this trust, and that shit feels hella good. And then you can go about your day like feeling, optimal,
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So after the tower, and remember how we saw the crown, and the crown was kind of getting separated. That'll be another topic to talk about, the separation of the crown later. But after that, if you pick up the shambles, or you know how to deal with this, right? Then there's the emperor, right? And look at this guy. He's in red. And what is he on? He's on a throne of Rams, of Aries. So there you go, fire guy. You know what I mean? And freaking, he is super stable. And people hella trust him, and people hella go to him, and people feel hella protected. So there goes all that stuff with the base. It's like that rock that you could like lean on, and like, how there's certain people, if you're going to go on a battle, like there's certain people that you just want on your team to battle with you because you can rely on them. Like they're like a rock to be trusted. Like that's where when that gets culminated, that's right here. That's the emperor.
You know what I think is really interesting with that? I'll just say this real quick. When it comes to there's the Yod-Heh Vod-Heh formula. Fire, water, air, and earth. King, queen, prince, and princess. I think what we're seeing with those two cards, the tower card, it's broken because you're going down. Yeah. When you're heading back up the tree, you end up the emperor and you end up the king. Yod-Heh Vod-Heh. So I think you're seeing both aspects. Either you're going to get destroyed from going down and earthly things, or you'll become the emperor by raising up.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to show, speaking of polarity, I wanted to show the two different polarity aspects of Mars, because some of these planets like Mars and Saturn, they get like a super duper bad rap. And then I just want to kind of even out the playing field, you know what I mean? Because we've all gone through our own different like bad raps via archontic forces. And that is nothing to like scoff at or to laugh at or to belittle, because I want to, like, everyone's gone through their own shit. And then there's a way to like kind of tie this thing back to establish like a balance. So that way you don't feel like you're freaking off kilter or that you're chasing your tail all the time. How I used to.
Yeah.
That's
a very good chasing your tail. Fuck.
Yeah.
Great way to put it, my man.
That's what I was
chasing
doing before.
Your fucking tail, right?
Yeah, man. I remember talking to you. This reminds me of like a little, because we've had different little chats, but this was kind of a while ago. And then I was expressing to you at the time of like the mind fuckery that I was dealing with in terms of A Course in Miracles, and that I was getting off of that shit, off of that freaking Kool-Aid, so to speak. Cause I was like, I had my own picture of it. And I was letting you know that like, I'm going through this, and then this is something that I have to like, I think you told me like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Oh, Lux. Yeah.
Like,
That's Lux. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and it's like this way I can still embrace components of that thing and not feel like I got super duped. And you got to, it's like, okay, you take your licks, you know what it is, but this way you don't compartmentalize yourself so much. Cause when you start doing that hella much, there's when you're going to need hella more shadow work, or there's going to be like soul fragmentation type issues. Yes. And we don't want to do that. That's going to hella take us out of our course.
You're nailing it.
And then so one thing that A Course in Miracles was making me do, with me knowing it, even though I kind of was thinking I was doing the right thing or something, is I was just chasing my tail, trying to be righteous or trying to like do the supposed righteous thing. And I have like a difference in opinion on that now. And now I feel hella more whole, and I feel hella more real.
I hear what you're saying.
And
I'll even say throughout my magical career, this is just my opinion. If you're thinking the same way you did when you started, there's something wrong. Because you should be evolving in the mind. You should start seeing new things. Things should be opening up. You should be changing. Your beliefs or your ideas or your theories should be not constantly changing, but I think if you're the same person you were 3 years ago and you're practicing magic, you're not doing something right.
Yeah, something
There should
about
be
that don't
growth
make
and
sense.
change. There's supposed to be growth and change within there.
Yeah, something about that just it doesn't add up. You know what I mean? And then
Mm-hmm.
I was at that time when I was telling you about the shit that I was going through. I was basically trying to unbrainwash myself because I had brainwashed myself on account of me, and I had done that for so long, and I was trying to just unwind myself out of it. You know what I mean? You have to fucking let shit clear. You know, especially when you're trying to improve and move on. You want to, like there's only so much shit you can fit in a room. So sometimes you got to clear the room out, do spring cleaning, and then after you did that, then you can buy your new shit. You can't buy new shit and then throw it on top of your old shit.
Well, I mean, unless you're my wife.
Yeah, well, women, yeah, exactly. I know what you're talking about. That's how women like to do it. It's like you have all this shit in the shed from fucking God knows from 2000 whatever year. Like you never.
Oh shit!
No, I don't want to get rid of it. Like, oh my god, we can't be all sentimental over these material things. For God's sakes, there's a globe in here. Like, just get rid of it already. God damn it! What year was this from?
Did you even? Yo, at one point, I shit you not, my man. Wait, I've lived in Queens. How many years now? Whatever. I've been out here for a while, and right before, or I think it was actually right at the beginning of this whole scandemic thing. And so I had lived somewhere previous, like 3 years prior to that, and I had told my wife, I said, we're since we're moving, I said, when we find stuff that we have not touched since we've moved into this apartment, it's not coming with us to the next one.
Yeah, man.
That simplified a lot of shit. And it actually made her be like, you know what? Maybe I am holding on to this shit for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Dude, that even goes with like feng shui. You know what I mean? Like it's like even it's in so many different things, or like the whole cluttery thing. Like, you can't have a clutter and then expect your mind to be, you know what I mean? Like, how are you gonna? It doesn't work because then a cluttered house is gonna be a cluttered mind.
I agree with
efficiently. You know what I'm saying?
All right, sorry to go off on that, but all right, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, freaking yeah, but it's funny how that works, but you got to take care of all that stuff too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, and then I'm also thinking.
I don't know we're gonna be.
Yeah, I was gonna say not to interrupt you, but hopefully you can hear me because it looked like you froze up again. I was gonna say maybe we'll cover Mars and then the next one, and then we'll wrap it up and actually just do another episode. We could even turn this into a series if need be. And Louis is froze again. Okay. All right. So as it seems, because of the time, and I didn't realize, in my opinion, how well this was going to go between both of us. I do think we will just cover Mars, and then maybe go into the next sphere, maybe, and then wrap it up, or depending if Louis doesn't come back, we might wrap it up soon. But my original idea was to cover all seven. All seven is not happening unless Louis probably got another 2 hours and I don't. So I don't think we'll be getting as far in as we were going to, but I'm going to try to maybe keep this at maybe 2 hours. And if Louis comes back, we will finish up Mars and go into the next chakra or planet. And then we'll probably wrap it up there. But hopefully Louis comes back. If not, you're stuck looking at me for another few minutes until I sign off. So yeah, that's the deal. Probably end up turning it into 2 or 3 parts, which is quite all right with me. So yeah, is there any questions or anything anybody would like to add while I'm waiting for Louis to come back? Oh, and something I do want to also add, since I have the time to do it now. Live call-ins might start being a thing for specific episodes. I did not have the chance to try it out prior, but because of I did want to try it with this episode, maybe the next one going forward, I will offer, if it works correctly, live call-ins. There'll be a number at the bottom that will scroll across the bottom that you will be able to call and join us in the topic or to add to what we're covering. I'm going to be honest. It's not. Listen, if you want to call up and say you guys are great, thank you, and hang up, that's cool. But it's really, it's more of like for fitting the topic. If you have experience or if you have something that you can add to it. That's why I'm going to try to do it on very specific shows. Moving forward, people may not notice it for another month or two because of I already have shows done until I think December, ready to drop. But I am going to also start covering more specific topics on neither my own or me and Teresa. The NY Patriot show, it's going to go through a little bit of a change. I want to start covering topics more myself or with a co-host instead of just having a guest on and talk for an hour and a half. There is a lot of things that I would like to be able to do, and I want to start doing that. Instead of worrying about guests, maybe I will just have less guests on and I will just spend more time actually researching and preparing for a topic myself instead of having a guest on, or just like this scenario. I've wanted to cover Planetary Magick myself, saw that Louis into it, and I figured here's a perfect way for me to cover a topic on my show myself and have a guest join me. So there should be more of that going forward. Yeah. You'll see it
Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all right. You're good. Yeah, I was just explaining real quick, Louis, that this type of thing with me covering topics neither on my own or with a guest is, I'm going to be doing that more often than having a guest on who's just covering a topic and I don't know anything about it. You know what I'm saying? I want to get a little bit more in depth, and I think this is a perfect example of it. And real quick, just because of the time now, I said it while you were gone. If you don't mind, we'll cover Mars and then go into the other chakra, and then from then we'll probably stop it there and we'll make this a series and just continue going on, if that's okay with you. Because that will probably be around. Yeah, that will probably be around 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? They'll probably be around a 2 hour mark by the time we finish. And I have no problem having you come back on, cover another 2 or 3, come back on, finish it off. This takes 2 or 3 episodes to do. I have no issue with that because I honestly think the stuff that we're covering and even the banter, the things that we're talking about as examples, it's all great shit. I have no problems. I have no problems with the episode taking this long. I'm not complaining. Just letting you know.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I think this is great.
No, I actually like it. That we're rapping because it's actually helping me. It's helping me learn. It's helping me wrap my head around this shit too. Because I'm not like a freaking professional and all that shit. Like in terms of like freaking that I know all this shit. I'm like learning too. You know.
Oh, same here, man. Same here. I just know what I know. That's it.
Wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the correlations because it helps. Like it freaking helps me tie the shit together too. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome.
So,
all right, if you know where you left off, I guess you can continue.
Yeah. So just
fingers crossed, we'll make it.
The last part was just about the tarot cards, and then so the Emperor is kind of like what happens after the chaos from the Tower moment, right? After that gets established, and then when we embody the sense of authority, confidence, and dependable nature, that's when the Emperor. That's when we get crowned with the fire throne, and there you go, Mr. Aries with the Rams and all that, and then you get lit, and then it's called
you get lit. I love it, yo. I mean, think about it. Think about what I said before with how you could even be using that for the chaos and change in your own thinking and in your own mind. If you are able to harness that and then become control of your own self and your own thinking. I don't know. You can maybe call yourself a king or an emperor in a sense of your own mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And how I was talking about a little bit earlier about how I think the lower chakras are like the masculine and then they're tied to a lot of will. Remember, I don't know if you're like a Rocky fan with the Rocky movies. I forget which one it was. It was either Rocky 5 or I don't want to say, but he was like, hey, Frankie Fear. Like, how did you do that, Rocky? And he started talking about Frankie Fear. Fear is like the fire. Like, right? Fire, fear. Mm-hmm. And then if you can, like, harness the combustion of the fire type of a master in your own way, in your own regard. It's about freaking using Frankie Fear, that fire. And then it's like burning and burning and burning, and it's like insatiable. And then if you can freaking, if you know how to put the boundaries on that to temper the fire, that's where you can feel a lot of like fucking, like you're on top of yourself, for sure. That
Yeah.
Frankie fear,
You know what?
So,
Real quick, I just want to add this. I think what you're saying too, with like the fire and the combustion and the fear and stuff. It's almost as if you have to. This is going a little bit into astrology. It's kind of going from like Aries to Leo. Aries is the much more explosive combustion, big bang, and then the Leo, in my opinion, is a little bit more focused. And
exactly.
it's a little bit different of a fire. It's focused and it's just not as chaotic. So I
Yes.
even think that's even a good way to try to explain.
That's why yeah, for sure. That's why the Aries is like the bang, like the one to bang it out, right? And then the Leo is the one that's like, if you think about it, it's like more like a Leo has that confidence where like if they're in a crowded room, Leo's the one that's like, look at me. Like it's kind of like almost like they're showing off, like they're strutting or they're showing off like a peacock. And it's that passionate look at me version as opposed to like that boom of like Aries, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're both fiery, but it's like a little bit.
Oh well, with Leo, then you have to worry about
How you said more centered, and then so it's like, look at me, I'm like the center of attention.
Leo. I think with that, just like a prideful lion, you have to start worrying about pride as becoming the vice when you start talking about Leo as well. So I could even see how you're even going on about look at me. That's the whole thing of look at me.
Exactly.
So
because then that's where that whole vanity shit. Like that's where a lot of the vain, like just just staring at yourself, like you just get obsessed with yourself.
Yep, you fucking nailed it, bro.
You know what I mean? That could be like a downfall of the Leo like that, because they're so used to being looked at as like a leader and like a center of the stage type of dude.
Mm. Real quick, I just want to cover this.
Yeah.
I'll cover this real fast, and then either you can go back to Mars, whatever you got left, or we'll go into the next one. But just so I don't forget, and I actually don't want to cover this stuff as much as I thought I was going to, because I think we talked enough and covered shit that I don't need to repeat myself. But just for people to get an understanding when it comes to, like, we're talking about magic. You even said before stuff with colors, numbers. When it comes to planetary magic with Mars, there are numbers that are associated. 5, 25, 125, 555. The color, red. We were talking about that before. We both got red on. And today's Tuesday. Rules, Aries. And then there's also Scorpio. The metal associated with it, iron or brass. Day of the week, Tuesday, today. Element fire, direction, it says southwest, I would say south. Concepts, anger, conflict, courage, ego, energy, passion, sex, drive, strength, vengeance, vigor. There's good things and bad things in there. Tools, anvil, hammer, scourge, spear, or whip. Deities, Aries, Horus, Mars, Nergal, Archangel, Camiel. And if you're into magical squares, which really, it's kind of like tying, in my opinion, this is tying the Kabbalah and planetary magic together. This is what you will see. That is the square. It's a 5x5 square because Mars falls on the fifth sphere of the tree, so it is a 5x5 square. That is the seal of Mars. Then there's the planetary symbol at the bottom. And then there again is the seal of Mars. This is the sigil of the intelligence, and this is the sigil of the spirit. I'm not going to get too deep into that stuff. I just wanted people to see, and maybe any of that happens to pop up in their daily life when they're thinking about something or seeing something. They'll be like, oh, maybe that's a Mars energy that I didn't even realize that's influencing me. So I'm good with Mars. If you got anything left,
pretty much. I was gonna make two little.
Well, go for it.
My last 2 points of Mars iron, and then about the day in a sense. I just thought it's funny that in terms of the base word of Mars, it's Mar, right? And Martes is the third day of the week when you go from Sunday on, right? It's the third day, and then we have the third month, which is March, Mar. So for some reason they like 3 and 3 in terms of picking that, like the day and then the month, like it's in that order of the third, you know. And then there was iron there that you have as the metal element, and so in a lot of like rituals, they'll use like a iron sword to go, you know, to make kind of like, they use that as like protection. And then I've even heard that like sometimes people would just keep an iron sword, something there. It's almost like it'll keep any potential spirits at bay that like they won't want to fuck with you if you have your iron there for some reason, that like they don't want to mess with that, you know. So it's like a protection.
It's interesting you mentioned the sword. Real quick before we go on to the next one, I was just thinking before when I was reading off that other stuff. It's funny how we mentioned before about lighting a fire under your ass. If you look at Mars as being the thing that neither determines if you're going to go up or you're going to go down, the fire is Aries, but then that can get put out with Scorpio's water, can it?
Yeah.
And I forgot what the other thing was going to be. Oh, the sword. I have heard, I don't know how truthful this is, but some do say that if you're in the OTO and you might be doing your second degree, I don't know how truthful this is, just things I've read, you may have to stand in the corner and actually hold a sword while somebody's reading a fucking thing for about 5 minutes, and you're going to be standing there in the corner of the fucking temple with the sword. Possibly. That's what I heard. I don't know how truthful it is, but, you know, I heard that happened. So there's even a sword in, like you were saying, in initiations and stuff.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, it's like it'll keep potential shit that you're not trying to evoke or not trying to fuck with. It'll keep it at bay, you know, because sometimes there's like hobo spirits, you know, like the meandering around hobo spirits, you know, from that maybe is lost or whatever, and then, you know, they might try to come up on a spot that doesn't belong to them or that they weren't called to, you know.
Yeah. You know
One last thing about I guess
no, go ahead. I was going to say something.
I talked about Rocky earlier with the Frankie Fear. Oh, okay,
Right.
sorry. And then how we're talking about iron. I remember in the iron, I believe it was Rocky 4.
Iron Mike Tyson.
I forget, but oh, and then Iron Mike Tyson. See, they were saying that.
And you have iron in your blood. If you don't have iron in your blood, you're going to have a problem too.
Yeah, that means you're not built for battle type of thing, and that's okay. I mean, you know, and I remember like in part 4 when he was going against Drago, the Russian. I believe it was against the Russians and against Drago, and they were saying in their language, they were saying, "Oh, he's made of iron. Like how come you can't get him?" And then he's like, "He's made of iron." Like he tied him to Mars, and then who was his best friend? Apollo, the sun god, right? And then who did he fight? Drago. Drago is like Draco. You know what I mean? Drago, Dragana. I had a friend, an old coworker named Dragana. You know, like that's like like a dragon name or something. You know what I mean? That's for Draco. See, so they have that shit in the Rocky movie.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you said that because I have actually thought that parts of Rocky movies, I hate to say it, there's occultism in those, as silly as it sounds. I even came across when we were covering, and I don't think I brought it up, when we were covering the Order of Quetzalcoatl, there was like a certain area that we were covering, and like there's a Balboa Park over there. And when I was looking at whatever I could see online, there is a ton, of my opinion, of occult architecture in there. So I'm even wondering, like, with fucking Balboa, like, you know, I don't know. A snake, Quetzalcoatl, a feathered snake, who knows? A feathered serpent,
Yeah.
you know.
That's funny because, you know, I live in San Francisco, and here, instead of like the subways, how you guys have over there, we have, it's called BART, right? Bay Area Rapid Transit. So it's like a little subway that it'll go either on top or underneath, right? And it's like our version of that. And I know one exit away from my exit is Balboa, and then we have a Balboa Park. One BART station exit away from where I live.
Know, where are you from again?
Well, I'm in San Francisco. Yeah, I was
gonna say I think the Balboa Park I'm talking about is probably the one you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's in San Francisco. Yeah, and
That's
yeah, on
wild.
the outskirts of the mission. Yeah, and so yeah, it's just Rocky. Like as a kid, like I used to watch a bunch of Sylvester Stallone movies all the time, and not until the last half a decade did I start making correlations with all this shit. I'm like, boy, there's like shit, like pretty much everything has shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because as a kid, I didn't think about that. I was just watching, fighting and into the drama of it. But then later on, you start realizing like, oh shit, like, and it's a trip because I said it before. Like technically, Apollo was a better fighter, or like
Oh
he
yeah.
was more well versed. It's just that Rocky had that thing that you couldn't like. He had that resiliency of where you couldn't break him down. Like he could get fucked up. Like he was more resilient than all the other ones. That's why he got in the situation he was in. You know what I mean? Because he was more resilient in that way. And then like a true fighter. You know what I mean? He was like a true scrapper. You know what I mean? As
Yeah.
opposed to Apollo, which was like very primped, like a very primpy version of a fighter, a super balanced fighter. He was actually more like, how like football, how they
Mm.
have like the NFL combine, right? And they do the stats on all the NFL players. If they were gonna do a combine between Apollo and Rocky, Apollo would blow him out the water, and even is because Rocky has his thing about him, like the iron cheekness to him, that's why he can overcome them. You know what I mean?
Not to like mind fuck Rocky now. And I will say,
Please.
there is times where I think, I mean, maybe it's one of those things where I do think sometimes the Matrix can just reveal itself, or maybe the whatever however you wrote it just was appealing, whatever. But I mean, even thinking about it now, did he have to beat Apollo so he became the balanced person? Was he showing the
Yeah.
fights going up the tree or different aspects? Was he defeating them and becoming them now and taking on that? I mean, this can get fucking wild just talking about Rocky.
Yeah.
The way what you just said and everything
He
with
was
the
getting
balance
he
of
was getting the
Apollo.
titles. Well, yeah, right.
Because Apollo would fall on,
Didn't he give him his belt?
yeah, the Apollo
He
also,
gave him his belt.
Apollo would be associated with gold because he's a sun god.
Yeah.
And on the tree of life, the sun is balance and beauty. It's the middle sphere. So it's just like, yeah, when you were talking about that, I'm like, fuck, this guy's like telling a story of going up the tree. And it's fucking Rocky.
Ooh, right? You're making me want to watch. Yeah.
Oh shit.
That was like that's like one of my all-time favorites, bar none, dude, for sure. Classic 80s
Oh
shit.
fuck
I
yeah.
think all the 80s movies are like classic, like I'm with all that 80s stuff as opposed to like later on. Like there's something about that where if you had to go into a vacuum and put it in a vacuum and just pick like a certain like genre era, I would go 80s funny movies all day, like the goofy 80 movies. Like, man, I just love all that dumb shit,
Oh, me too.
all the dumb 80s stuff. You know what I mean?
For sure. No,
It's like
yeah, I love that stuff too. I'm
it
probably
just
gonna watch Rocky
kind
now
of
because of
reminded me of
this.
like an innocence. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it brings me back to like an innocence of like what it was like in the 80s. Like, you know what I mean?
when
Being a
you were
kid and
able to
like,
like do something and not worry about 20 other things. You were able to actually watch a movie and enjoy it as a kid because you weren't worried about fucking work,
yeah,
insurance, and 10 other fucking things at the same time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you were kind of able to do what you want for the most part. I don't know how, because nowadays like parents won't let the kids out till like they used to let us out till like until the sun got until it got dark, and then that's when you come back home type of thing. And now there's no way in hell a lot of people would do that. It's not the same no more. It's like
No, totally different
a
world.
certain liberation kind of like faded out. So
Yes.
I guess I like that shit. It kind of gives like nostalgia. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure, the nostalgia. All right, so now, if you don't mind, I guess maybe we'll go on to the next one that you wanted to cover, and then after that, we'll wrap it up,
Yeah.
and we will continue this. We'll
Cool,
definitely
man.
continue this.
Yeah. So here, after number one, we're going to this orange one, right? Orange is also known as the sacral chakra. And so in the second chakra, we have the big celestial body of Jupiter. And this big, vast, expansive nature and is good to work with and call upon when embarking on a new adventure like a business project, or if you're looking to expand your resources. It'll help to bring good luck, which is different than fortune, because these three get confused. There's fortune, which is like Venus, and then there's regular just luck, like regular luck, which I think is Mercury, like where regular luck can go either way. Either you have good luck or bad luck, right? But with this one, with the sacral Jupiter, it's actually all right. So this is the good luck. And
I could see that.
this archetype is known as a benefic planet because of its selfless good character and high moral grounds. And things gained by course, and it gains by correct reasoning and peace. So it's like very diplomatic in this way for being a lower chakra. It's like the very diplomatic side of the lower chakras. All right. And this is a main avenue for ethics to come into play with the embodiment of oneness and all-encompassing nature, right? So this is where like the lower masculine chakras, this is where there's like the unifier, okay, of this fiery section, right? Because red, orange, yellow is like a flame, right? Like the like harnessing of oneness in that fire section. And so I believe that this is where the concept of Christ conscious energy comes into play. Because from my personal experience, when I've done like just different healing stuff with or without people, and times when I've like, because I'll talk to myself, okay, I might be a little crazy, but when I talk to myself and I get in these certain, like a certain, sometimes when I talk or when I've done healing things, I get this thing of pure like oneness. And then sometimes when I'm by myself and I talk and I feel this oneness, I literally feel like I'm like the only one big character in the universe. And Jesus, because Jesus was all about oneness and like unifying and all that stuff. So I think that this is where like the Christ conscious comes into play. And that's why it gets such a good rap, like they call it the benefic planet, because it's so like it's morally all encompassing like that.
Yeah, when I used to practice magic, I would use Jupiter or Chesed on the Tree of Life for those reasons. It's for more understanding of God, to contact more of a spiritual, trying to go, higher up, getting closer to God, getting an understanding of Him. Sometimes I would use it to invoke Archangel Zaphiel, who's known as being very close to God. It's just my own self. When I used that sphere, it really was to kind of like, I guess, get a feeling from God. It's hard to explain, but the same thing you're saying is the same reason why I would use it.
It's tied to mercy, right? On the tree.
Yes, and abundance. And so like that was the whole thing. I wanted to have an abundance, right? Abundance of a relationship, or abundance of knowing of the relationship between me and God. That's how I was really looking at it. Yeah.
And see, like when I've heard the correlation, like recently with you, where you guys talking about like mercy, right? I think about like the right side of threefolded of like Trinity concept. So the right is the mercy, right? Like, and the mercy, who was known for mercy? Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. And so Zeus is tied to Jupiter. Like that's like the tie there. And so with Zeus and with Jesus, it's like it's the mercy side, the mercy pillar, right? As opposed to the severe side. And so that's why it's all about, it has like that good character, and so this orange center is like, that's why it's in the middle of the yellow and the red. So it's like you got this, the yellow here, and then here the Frankie fear or the fire. When you temper and balance it, here in the orange is where you get the divine will, or the will of kings. And in terms of the lower chakras, this is where you get that kingly will. Because if you just have all soul urge and individuality, it's going to be too like egocentric. And if you go super primal, you're going to be super animalistic, like you're going to lose touch with stuff, right? And so if you harness both of those and you push them in here, that's where you get, it ends up being the king later on. You know, you get the divine will.
That's so funny, because you remember before when I had mentioned the Yod Hey Vod Hey thing before with the king, queen, prince, and princess on the bottom of the tree. Even though it's on the left side, I do think it's actually more of a male aspect. You have the yellow sphere called Hod, not yellow, orange. Now if we get into Mercury or whatever, that color is yellow, and that's also associated with that sphere. In my opinion, going up the tree, that's the prince. And then once you eventually go up, you become the king. So like even the colors now, does that have something to do with the fire? You know what I'm saying? And then, I don't know. It's very interesting. The passion maybe to become the king, the spark, maybe the spark of fire. I don't know. Seems very weird. The colors and stuff that you're saying, it just all seems to correlate with something.
Yeah, well, like Jupiter is known for like kind of like the higher resonance version of the sun. It's almost like after the sun got refined, then you get these concepts of Jupiter. And then that's why it's all about like this moral grounds and like the ethics that give it like that whole things that come with like a Christ consciousness or a one consciousness. It's like a unification consciousness.
Well, like I was even saying before about like how I use the Gita as an example of like kind of like discarding things and stuff. Well, maybe in all of that is what you're doing is actually building your own ethics instead of somebody else's that you've inherently taken.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So but you have to go up. You have to rise up for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a sign of like a true king is when you did your work, you did your own work. You weren't copying the guy next to you, or you weren't forcing something or faking something. You just you just did what you did. And then that's like a sign of like a kingly sign of someone. You know what I mean?
Awesome stuff.
Yeah. So, and divinely guiding in nature, right? So divinely guiding in nature is just how we get the divine will. And this is where we also get the inspiration of gurus and spiritual helpers like the Buddha and like Jesus. So that's all these guys, like the people who've gotten like that spiritual teacher or the guru-y, even though now guru has such a damn bad connotation nowadays, but the guru-y archetype comes from Jupiter. It's like that helper, that divine helper, and showing about oneness, because some of the most
powerful, a lot of those figures almost lead by example and not lead by telling you what to do.
Yeah. And that's like how a true king rolls, you know? And I'm telling you, like some of those oneness experiences that I've had, like I can't forget them. I can't get them out of my head. Like they're always going to be with me. I can't let it go. And I believe that, I want to call it, if it's Christ consciousness or this oneness consciousness, I believe like to me, it's extremely real. And then it's a part of what keeps me grounded here, you know, in this place of duality. And then, so, like that's why it's benefic. You know what I mean? And, in the pixie tricks, the aim of the sage or the goal of goal of the wise, it says that Jupiter is warm and moist. And I think when I think of that, I'm sorry, dude. When I think of that, just how you're laughing, what do you think about that? You think about private parts. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's down here. And then what other god or whatever is tied to that? You could say a hammer. He drops a hammer. That's also sexual, right? And so this it's like, it keeps going back to that sexuality. The Jupiter is like this exchanging, not to give too much away from the moon, which will come later on at some other point. But in terms of the fire, the lower fire, the masculine, Jupiter is the exchange. And then later on, you have different exchanges that happen with the moon. And that's a different exchange. It's a more feminine exchange. It's different. It works on more subconscious levels. But Jupiter is the one that you feel the fire, the exchange of the fire. And that's why it's, you know, you drop in a hammer. Think about the Family Guy cartoons. I don't know if you ever watched that, but you have the main character, feminine. I put that in Venus. And then you have Peter. What's another word named for your ding dong? It's your Peter, right? And so it goes in jokes. I learn from the universe by these jokes a lot of times, and then by breaking down numbers and the letters and stuff. And so that shows you about the sacred sexuality from the sacral. You know what I mean?
You know what's really interesting? You're saying all this about Jupiter. Now, on the tree of life, as you're going up, before you technically cross the abyss, Jupiter would kind of be like the last sphere before you, well, sorry. It's the sphere before you hit Saturn or Binah. Now, in my opinion, that sphere in itself is the go-between both worlds.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is what you just mentioned. In occultism and in the Kabbalah, Binah is considered the outer robe of concealment and is sometimes linked to a vagina. And that is the sphere right above.
There's the woman voice.
Right above Jupiter, you have Binah. So it's like even you talking about the warm and moist, you know, is it getting ready for that? And that's when, in my opinion, when it comes to sex magic, a lot of that stuff, in my opinion, is actually just more archetypes to tell you other stuff. Yes, people do sick, fucked up shit with sex when it comes to magic, but I really do think a lot of it is just a way to cover up stuff, just like how, you know, they're using in occultism or Kabbalah as a vagina for Saturn. I really don't think it has anything to do with actual sex. I just think it's kind of showing you directions of energies and something going somewhere. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting that you said it's right on the tree like that. It's right before Saturn, right? And how I kind of gave the little mini discrepancy in the beginning. I believe it to be so. Like, this is just how I live it. And like one discrepancy is that they'll put Jupiter up here, but with how I've been tying everything, it just doesn't happen to work like that for me. I just so happen to use the moon here, you know, and then but the thing is though, it's tied to it because, and even in like the planetary rotations, I think they're like one after another. And then in this whole thing of like all this mythos and all these stories, like it's like a sun god. It's always like this. It's always like that. It's always with Jupiter and Saturn. They're always thinking. There's always the fight for the crown, or always the kingly battle. And then that's how we've gotten into all this shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's why the later testament of the Bible, I feel, is Jupiter based. They called the newer one. Like, he came after. He took the crown, right? And then so that's why later on you have in the New Testament, there's no more eye for an eye. There's no more severity like that. It's about Jesus, and it's about Christianity, Christ, deity. See, so it's all about, then they etch in those concepts, you know, and that's Jupiter in the house. You know what I mean? And so right judgment, you know, right judgment on the right side, the mercy side, and equality in all things, gentleness, truth, faithfulness. It's like it won't do you dirty like that, right? all the morals held in, right? And then that's why it could be, because a king is like diplomatic, you know, so you have to be fair and, you know, all that. So that's where the diplomacy comes in, right? And so with the will of the kings and that divine will of the kings, it delights in riches and it accumulates them. Because as you see, like throughout time, what did they do? They expanded like fuck. Jupiter's expansion, right? They expanded like fuck in the name of Jesus. And this is where you see the shadow side, because what did they do a lot of times to convert people? They probably they wrecked shop. They probably killed, there was probably a lot of killings in the name of Jesus. You know what I mean? And then so it goes both ways. It's like they're preaching, but then they're using this. So here in 3D, in this polarization place, things can get distorted. And that's why it's okay to figure all this shit out so you can do your homework and then you can navigate accordingly and not get hung up on shit. I just don't want people to get hung up on shit. If you get hung up on stuff, you can't clear your mind.
You sound like the intro to the Occult Rejects right now. I mean, that's exactly.
See? Yeah, man. If you can't clear your mind, you won't be able to go accordingly. Like, you won't be able to be receptive and then to be creative. Like you're gonna get stifled.
Yeah, you're gonna be stuck
know?
in the bullshit, and you won't be able.
And so, in terms of Jupiter, yeah, you'll be like either you'll be too much in the past or too much in the future, and then there's anxiety that comes with that because it's like, how can you really be in the past, or how can you really be in the future? To be there, supposedly, even though it's kind of not there, that's anxiety by definition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Fucking great, man.
Yeah.
And you know, you know what? No, Helen, I totally agree with you. I think Jupiter is associated with the Wheel of Fortune card too. But one thing I did want to throw in real quick, you mentioned, he had it already. One thing I did want to mention,
big and round it is. Look how big and round it is. It's like very jovial, right? It's like
and you remember before how you mentioned expansing or an expansion? I mean, not to get perverted or whatever, but I mean, again, go back to, how you mentioned Peter before. Yeah. I mean, your dick will get expansive when it gets a hard on. Yeah. That is male energy rising in a sense.
What do people think about when they say, "Hey, I'm finna drop a hammer"? What I mean, they're not talking about sex, okay? I mean, let's be honest. Dropping a hammer means you want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how that comes. If we were going to a bar, right? All of us at a party, and we're walking into a bar. Jupiter is that jovial, happy one that it says, "All right, guys, rounds on me. I'm getting these rounds." Like he's at least getting the first round, at least. If not, he's gonna get 3 or 4 rounds or 5 rounds. Like that's like Jupiter is like, no, we're doing it big today.
We're going all out.
We're doing it real grande, real. Jupiter's that guy. It's like very abundant like that. Like how Saturn is the opposite, like very shady, very cutting. This is like the abundant, like, no, like we got it big today. Like we're gonna, like, girl, you want cheese on that burger? We're gonna put cheese on that burger. Like that type of mentality,
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, man. And so, although our brain is in our head, right? And we talked about the reptilian brainstem earlier. You can see another form of a brain because of how it takes in all this. It receives hella energy. That gut feeling, that's like a brain, an organ of a brain. That's like your gut. So it's tied to there. And then in terms of correlation with organs, like the actual organ it's correlated with is the liver. The liver is the biggest organ. So here we go with big, with that kind of stuff. And then your gut, it's like the Jupiter is like its own brain. And then and this is the beginning, because before they would, like, when I heard about that juke stuff, I was like, how is that true? And I thought it was like the moon, but see, it keeps going up here. But here's the thing. Before you get psychic like that, like being able to travel out there, you have to be psychic with your gut intuition, with your gut feeling. That comes first, right? Once you start honing in on your gut feeling, then you can start doing the feminine versions or whatever, right? And so
it's funny you mentioned intuition. If you were to go after this show, as silly as this is going to sound, go listen to Jules' song Intuition, or go look at the video and watch the video and read the lyrics. That chick was telling you something then. As cheesy as that sounds.
See, and like these people, they all know. Like these people are no slouches, man. Like whether people figure it out sooner than later, it's put out there for a damn reason. Like, and it makes sense. You know what I mean? So that good old gut feeling is telling you something, relaying messages on some instinctual level. All right. And here we go again with the freaky kind of stuff. So although Zeus was married to the Titan Metis and Hera, he was basically infamous for like kind of shape-shifting his incarnations. And he would have hella different incarnations or of different versions of himself in order to bag hella chicks, in order to freaking make love to so many different goddess chicks.
Oh, is a fucking vampire.
Yeah.
Goes from a bat to a human, and every bitch wants to fuck him now.
Yeah, and then he would go, it was like, oh, what, that person likes a bear, I'm gonna turn into a bear. Oh, that person likes a lion, I'm gonna turn into a lion. Oh, you like a snake? Oh, I can be a snake too. And then that's how he was known, infamous for having, you know what I mean? Apollo was one, Artemis, Dionysus. When I heard about Dionysus recently on a TikTok, someone said that he was Jesus, that Dionysus was Jesus. And then now that I'm here, well, we're saying that Jesus is the Jupiter archetype, and then Dionysus is the Jupiter arc. So they fell under the same archetype. You know what I mean? But basically, that's where all that freaky, like fiery kind of stuff comes from, because only someone like that would think about that. Like the sun is too caught up in himself to feel his own shine like that. Mars, that's not really Mars's thing. It's more like loyal in a way. But the freakier one like that is definitely Jupiter. You know what I mean?
No, I can agree with that.
So here we got the wheel. And look how big and fat the wheel is, right? So it means you're about to hit it big with something pertaining to good luck or prosperity, right? And so it basically means that you're winning. This card means that you're winning some kind of like wheel of fortune, right? Earlier, I was saying that fortune, the actual fortune itself, I consider that more Venus. That means you're getting a bunch of good luck fortune, right? Mercury can be more tricky, so that's either the up or down of luck, but this is the straight up good luck. That means you're winning, and that's it.
Well, Venus is underneath on this right pillar. Venus would be underneath that sphere on the tree, so it's even on the same side.
Okay. See, I like it. It ties it freaking nice, dude. Like, this is how we're not just talking out our asses.
I know, I'm loving this. I think this is great.
You can tie it around in different ways, and it still it resonates still. You know what I mean? And then so, how you're winning?
No.
Jupiter's a winner. Zeus got on top of the pantheon. He was a winner. Like how I said, they're all alphas, but he was the alpha that won and that had the test of time because of his diplomacy, and he held the reins like to be on top of the mountain, And so he took it from Saturn, taking the crown. That's why it got separated like that. Saturn, and dispensing justice, order, right? So think about this. When I think of Saturn, I think of like the opposite of order. It's more like chaos and karma, right? So this one, the orderly side, right? That's why it gets like the reputation as a good guy. Right?
Yeah, well, even with Jupiter, when you start getting into the Kabbalah with like Chesed, that falls on Chesed, the magical image would be like a mighty king sitting in his chair, almost like the emperor, and it's supposed to be like a utopia. Everything is supposed to be perfect and as is, and stuff like that.
It's like nice. How like, oh, everything, like it's just all good. That's why a trap, unfortunately, but I gotta tell it how it is. Unfortunately, that's why a trap, if you buy too much into it, is that Christ consciousness thing. Just how I was dealing with, like, too far off the deep end with that kind of stuff. You're going to be that self-righteous or spiritual bypassy, chasing your own tail. And that's just as dangerous as someone getting into like what you call dark shit. It's just as dangerous in its own way. It's just painted a different color.
I agree with you.
But totally. It can still throw you off kilter from not being real. And we're all real, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we are. Unfortunately, to an extent, yes, we are. I agree with that.
And so, all right. So now I'm going to talk about tin. Tin is the metal element. Iron was for Mars. So for me, I've talked about the Wizard of Oz before, like the Yellow Brick Road. I embrace like middle path. To me, it's more a matter of hedging your bets as opposed to middle path, poker talk, or even sports betting. I'm more a guy of hedging my bets. That's why I'm Louis that 11. I want both. Like I want both on either side. I want both at the same time in the way that my timing is supposed to get it. All right. So I think about the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz here. All right. One of his main fears, what's a main fear of tin? To get rusty, right? How do you get rusty? You get old. What's the adversary? What is old tied to? Chronos, the old man, father time. So once again, tin's element is old man, father time. See how they're always like freaking squaring up. They're always duking it out. And then once you can kind of see how that play, it's all a play. Once you see how that play interacts, then you can really feel comfortable about the sides you're taking in life. And then you can embrace like a neutrality. That's like a superpower. Neutrality and even
Oh yeah, that is.
discernment. Once you have be able to grab discernment, because with all this information and all the stuff that we learn and just with life in general, without discernment, it's like you're pretty screwy, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so neutrality will give you that power in order to start to be able to discern, you know? That's why you advocate meditation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What do you think is one of the benefits of that? It clears your mind. You get a sense of neutrality. And
I was just gonna say it's to actually be neutral to shit. To be totally honest with you, sometimes that's all it is. It's just not to fucking care about something that really you don't need to care about.
Yeah,
like clear your mind.
Like we know we have, you know, dinner to cook tonight and laundry to do tomorrow, but this is not the time to be thinking about that. You know, it's like you're harnessing your power, and then with this spirituality stuff, that's important, man. It's like an overlooked thing. Just instead of getting overwhelmed or bombarded with like knowledge, info, it's going to be just way too stimulated. You know what I mean? Stimulation overload. You know what I mean? And I'm like I'm not perfect. Like I freaking fall to it too, but that's why I pace myself, you know, and I ground myself. You know what I mean? So.
You know, real quick, you mentioned something before. Did you mention something about like how you think the moon is more associated with the head, but people say Jupiter, or you said that you've seen Jupiter? Yeah,
like maybe if you do it with the chakras, like in terms of the tree, they might say that it's the like right here, you know. But I put it down here with the Peter and with the fire, and then I make this this is the moon, and then what I've seen is that a lot of people confuse the moon with the pineal gland, which is like right in the middle of our heads, right? And and then once you get your centers and you're going, and you go up here, the pineal, which is in the middle, and then that will help finally activate the crown, which is like kind of like, imagine if we were a dolphin that has like a blowhole. It's right here, this pin, kind of like where a baby has a soft spot. You know what I mean? That's the entrance of the crown. That's the entrance of the cosmic consciousness, the finalizer. It's like the initiator was here, the moon, to start to get to those realms, like to help, like the gateway, and then the pineal gland is the one that does like that work, like a surfing, a trans surfing, if you will. And then once you're aligned, that's why the crown actually doesn't do shit. I learned that the last one really is this one. This is the one that really is the gateway. This one actually doesn't do shit. It's more of like alignment. A king doesn't do shit. That's why it's the crown, right? A king, you sit on your throne like a king. You don't do shit, right? And then all you do as a king is be in alignment. And if you're in alignment with your crown, boom, you'll get hella shit. Boom, you'll get hella information. That's where people say, oh, download. That's all that shit. When you have these epiphany moments, or you just feel like unreal, like something is it's so real that it's unreal. That's when your crown was in alignment with all the rest of the stuff. It's like the final barometer that even there in your crown, if you're balancing your crown, then that barometer you'll explode out from your quote unquote little blowhole here, if you will. I give the analogy of that. Like
I think that's a great way to put it.
One of the smartest in.
I think that's a great way to put it, because I have often thought, I really do think, as crazy as this sounds, when it comes to magic, you're opening your pineal gland, which is inside your head, and I think the top chakra is more of where are you choosing to go. It's hard to explain, but it's like the magic's, I think, has already happened here. Up here is just determining where you're going with that. Hard to explain. But the thing I brought up before, why I asked you about Jupiter at the head. Now, maybe that is also correct, because I'm having this idea, this vision in my head, and I'll explain it. Have you ever seen, I'll use this as an example so nobody takes it as me pointing fingers at anybody. Have you ever seen Signs, the movie Signs? They wore tinfoil hats, correct?
No, I don't think so.
Well, in that
Oh.
movie, they thought that there was aliens out there. They wore tinfoil hats, and I have seen tinfoil hats where people even have something a little phallic sticking out of the top too.
Pointy.
So I don't know, that whole thing
Dude,
that you
there
were
must
just
be a
saying right
tie,
there
yeah.
made me think
There
of
mu-
tinfoil hats. It's fucking weird.
Well, Jupiter is always banging on Saturn's door.
So a foil phallic
And from what I
hat.
learned, like you know how stuff of how Lucifer tried to like take over the throne of his dad. That's kind of like a similar story where Jupiter was the son of Saturn, and then he wanted to fight for that crown, and he took it over eventually. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's like that's
weird.
That's kind of the story for that.
No, I just thought that because I'm thinking of like
Yeah,
phallic stuff because we're talking about phallic stuff, and then you're talking about tin, and then you're talking about the head. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck, I've seen tinfoil hats that look like they got a fucking thing coming out of the top.
That
too.
makes sense.
It's fucking weird.
Yeah, there's something to that. I just so for some reason I think that's more for, and then I guess for chakras I still feel because the thing is though, the reason why I keep it like that with Jupiter as the sacral and then the moon over here is because later on when I try to put the moon there's too many aspects of like the moon's subconscious psychic powers that I'm not able to piece it together. But then when I put the moon here, it all makes sense with like the silver cord, how there's like you surf your pineal gland, and then so that's kind of why. But at the same time, they both develop psychic skills. It's just that one is feminine, one is watery, and then the other psychic skill of your gut is masculine and fiery. You know, so they both do that in a sense.
You put them together, what do you get? The Prince of Air. Get that evaporation, and you get some air out of that.
Yeah. See, that's a combustion in its own way. You know, in its own way for sure. Yeah. Well, I think that was pretty much what I got for
Awesome. Okay.
For Jupiter, because I had ended on my joke with the whole bar thing, but I got too excited and I said that.
I'm sorry. I probably fucked you up into interjecting too much.
Jupiter, no, but it was the perfect timing because Jupiter's always that guy, very abundant. Like, hey, like I got like dinner's on me, guys. Like, we're like, order that steak.
Party time. Everything's great. Everything's
get them, 2 rounds. Yeah, it's like very jovial. And then with Jupiter, that's where you get like jolly. And then Jupiter's into jokes and laughing. That's where you get that from. And think about this: when you see karmic shit like that could wreak havoc on you, like seemingly, let's just use the word seemingly, like from Saturn. What's the best thing to combat that with mercy is laughter. So that's why the Christ consciousness, in a sense, is a huge advocate for laughter. I even heard back in the day, a long time ago, that even Jesus was into like what do you call it? Like a slapstick comedy. You know how like the Three Stooges, like the Three Stooges and all that shit. Jesus was into that. I had heard that. So think about that's why he would be into that, because he's into goofy, slapstick, funny. Like, you know what I mean? And like it's like the opposite of that severity of Saturn. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's like another thing. So that's why laughter is super important. And if you think about it, if you can't laugh, you won't be able to forgive. You know, and forgiveness is also like a superpower. It's just I'm learning that you have to know how to forgive. Like it's a very certain way to forgive in a sense, by covering your bases and still not losing. Like you have to still be able to forgive, but still have yourself empowered, because sometimes people do it and they do it in a way to like be a martyr. And then that's not good, because then you'll be like a doormat. That's not really the business, you know. So.
You know, real quick before we wrap it up, I think it was interesting again that you mentioned kind of like a trickster or somebody who likes to joke around a lot. Again, when I was saying the
slapstick,
yes, when I was saying the Yod He Vav He formula, I still, even though it's on the female pillar, I do for some reason think Hod is the prince. And where I think he starts to become king is over at Chesed which you're saying, bringing up, humor and stuff. Well, Mercury, or where the prince is, that's known as a trickster as well. So, like, you're kind of taking a higher arc and keeping a little bit of that trickster still, but maybe in a different way. It's just funny how, like, I'm seeing connections between these things that I've said before. So, there's something else just to think about. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of later on. I can give like a mini preview into like our future shit, but like what you just broke down right now, how they kind of like what's the word? But
Like
they just
spawn
kind of
off
like,
of each
they
other.
have a little bit of they kind of bounce off each other like that in a way with a little bit of the essence. Later on, this does that with Mercury. It does that a lot too, and it's very prevalent in our lives. It's pretty interesting and it makes sense though, because once you leave something, you have a little bit of that resonance there, so it kind of makes sense too. You don't just completely just leave willy-nilly like that.
Yeah. So I guess like we said before, we'll probably end it here. I thought this was, it's a long episode. It went by fucking fast as fuck for me. I thought it was great. I truly, truly enjoyed covering this topic with you.
Yeah, I didn't think. Yeah,
I can't wait to
it's better than the opposite, because when time's going by slow, that's how you know something's jacked up. You know what I mean? When you're like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here.
No.
So, at least we had it happen faster. At least that means we're in a good place.
Oh, hell yeah. No, I think this was, thank you, Helen. I agree with you, Helen. I think this was a superb episode. I'm truly happy with the way it went. And to be totally honest with you, I'm actually kind of happy I'm going to turn it into a small series, because it's just more content that I can cover with just, it's a topic.
Yeah.
I think this will be great, and I think it will be a banger, dude. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this topic with me. Thank you so much, Louis, for real. I thought this was good shit. This was good talks. This is what it's all about, my man. Two people coming together and just tossing their ideas together and seeing what they get out of it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, dude. I really appreciate. It was a lot of fun. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, this was great.
And different, and I think that's what makes it good, because then we can bounce stuff off each other, and
that's
then
how we learn.
I'm learning too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm piecing it together too. So dude, right on, bro. Anytime you want me, you freaking dial me up and use the bat signal, and then I'll look up in the sky and I'll figure it out. I'll make my way to Gotham City.
My man.
I was saying before real quick that like New York, I consider New York like the real Gotham, like the real Gotham City. Yeah. Okay, right? And especially lately when I go downtown and I go by my city hall in San Francisco here, I'm like, God damn it, dude, this place is Gotham City Junior. So like, so we're just at different ends of this shit, but we're here. You know what I mean? So
Thank you.
East meets West, and from Gotham City to Gotham City Junior, because that's what it is too. When you look at it's a scene, it's a scene out there. It looks like a movie, and they're doing all this shit right outside City Hall. You wouldn't believe that. You wouldn't believe the shit that you see outside City Hall. It's a fucking scene, dude. Yeah, so right on, bro. Anytime you want, shit.
For sure. No, I mean, after this, we'll figure out and set a date to do part 2. So I mean, we're definitely finishing this, my man. Even if it takes 3 or 4 parts, we're gonna finish this. God damn
it, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Let everybody know, please, again, Louis. Let everybody know your show and where they can find it at, sir.
Yeah, so my show is Uncanny Mystic Minds podcast, and I'm pretty much on all major platforms. Spotify has the video. My IG is Uncanny Mystic Minds, and then even my email at Gmail is the same. Mystic Minds. If you have any questions, inquiries, or if you want to be a guest on the show, I'm all about how we did, just freaking sharing stuff and learning and having fun, and I think that everyone, like, we're all unique and we're all different, but kind of like in a fraction, how there's the denominator on the bottom. No matter what number is on top as a numerator, we all have the same denominator. Yes. We all have the same common denominator. So there's always something that we can gain from each other. I don't care who it is. Like, even if it's to do the opposite of you.
I agree.
There's
I agree.
something there's like, and so that's a part of what makes like once you recognize that, and then you can freaking help yourself and maybe help others. You know?
I totally agree with you, my man. After the show, if you don't mind, because I think I only put in your Spotify and your Instagram. If you want to send me your any other links or any other contacts after the show, I will add them to the notes. So, yeah, all of Louis' stuff will be in the show notes. Go check his show out and keep an eye open for part 2 of this banger series. Louis, thank you so much for coming on again, man. For real.
Thank you guys for listening.
I had a great fucking time with you. I thought this was an amazing talk. I learned from you. You learned from me. I'm sure the listeners got something out of it, and that's all I can ask for. I think this was amazing, and thank you.
Thank you, bro.
And
Right on.
until the next one, everybody be well. Later.